Chapter 1666. Now that he had regained his identity, he wouldn't pester her anymore, right? Shenjuli's eyes darkened. He naturally understood what she meant by, congratulations. His gaze fell on her and then he reached out to her. Imo, come with me to pick up the child. Devil Master, don't. Devil Master, you can't go. Devil Master, this person has evil intentions and has been hiding in our Mo palace. I'm afraid he's up to no good. I'm afraid it'll be disadvantageous for you if you go. The demons around her started to clamor. Gods and demons couldn't coexist, so immortals and demons naturally couldn't coexist either. Even if they were at peace, it was only on the surface. In fact, immortals and demons were very wary of each other. The demons deeply believed that these immortals were definitely up to no good. The demons surrounded Imo like a tide, afraid that she would fall into Shenjuli's trap. Although Shenjuli had publicly punished the Celestial Emperor, who knew if this wasn't a trick they had planned? Their goal was to trick the Devil Master who had finally returned into their trap. Therefore they definitely couldn't let the Devil Master fall into their trap. The demons were all furious and head steward Himu was the most furious of them all. He regretted it. Extremely regretful. This Shenjuli was obviously not an ordinary person. His martial arts were profound and unfathomable. Even if he didn't speak, he still had an aura that made it hard for people to breathe. With such obvious characteristics, he didn't expect him to be a supreme divinity. He allowed him to stay by the Devil Master's side, and even sympathized with him when he occasionally saw him suffer in front of the Devil Master. Now, it seemed that he was really blind. The Devil Master was still wise. Even if he didn't know the other party's identity, he wasn't moved by his actions and still treated him coldly like an enemy. The Devil Master was wise. He was really too wise. Head steward Himu snorted on the side and said with a fake smile, Divine Lord, your thoughts are indeed unpredictable. You're actually willing to lower yourself in our Mo palace. Please forgive us if we've neglected you these days. Now that Supreme Divinity has revealed your identity, please return to your Fanteon Palace. Shenjuli ignored him. Shenjuli had always been able to ignore people who had nothing to do with him. He kept looking at Amma. What? You don't dare? Head steward Himu immediately said, Devil Master, he's trying to goad you. You're wise, you definitely won't fall for his trick. It was not easy for the Devil race to be able to hold their heads high today, and it was all thanks to the Devil Lord holding the fort in the Devil race. If anything were to happen to the Devil Lord, the Devil race would most likely be driven to the barren lands of this continent. Thus, for the sake of the demon realm's safety, Manager Himu threw caution to the wind. He was certain that the Devil Lord would not be fooled, but he did not expect Imo to flick his sleeves and push away the demons around him. He walked step by step towards Shenjuli. Butler Himu, Demon Master. Himu, there's no need for you to say anything else. I'll be right back. Imo's words sealed the situation, causing all the devils to shut their mouths instantly. Imo didn't hold Shenjuli's hand. Instead, he brushed past him and said, Let's go. The two of them left side by side, leaving behind a group of immortals and devils staring at each other. Shuilan slowly walked out from behind the door. He looked at the two figures flying into the air in a slight daze. Although Imo had become much more taciturn, her most basic personality hadn't changed. She did things straightforwardly. Once she decided to do something, she didn't hesitate or overthink. No one could influence her. He just didn't know what kind of development would happen between her and Shenjuli after she left. Or would she just want to see the child? Chapter 1667. The Fanteon Palace was located on the 36th level of the sky. Outside the Fanteon Palace, Yi Tianli stood there and talked to Shen Yinma from time to time. At first, Shen Yinma replied to him, but he suddenly screamed and stopped talking. Yi Tianli's heart almost jumped out of his chest. If anything happened to the little brat in there, he would not be able to pay for it even if he had 8 lives. Not to mention that Shenjuli would not forgive him when he returned to his position. Even Imo would not let him go. He used to be the most powerful person in the 6 realms, but that was excluding the Divine Lord and the Great Devil. In front of these two people he was nothing but a weakling. He could only be tortured. It was already difficult for him to deal with one of them. If these two great gods were to fight him at the same time, he did not even dare to imagine how he would die. In order to get in touch with Shen Yinma, he almost used up all his strength. He used all kinds of spells to see what was going on inside. However, there was no movement inside. It seemed that the little guy had an accident. Although the Fanteon Palace was the old residence of the Divine Lord, it had been uninhabited for tens of thousands of years. No one knew what was inside. If a child like Shin Yinma encountered something strange and mysterious in there, he was not even qualified to fight with him. When Shin Jiuli and Imo arrived, Yi Tianli was anxiously pacing around outside. He was almost going crazy. When he saw the two of them together, Yi Tianli's face suddenly turned pale. He braced himself to go forward and bowed. He braced himself and quickly explained the situation inside. Shin Jiuli did not pay attention to him at all. He immediately rushed into the palace without waiting for him to finish. The palace gate, which was regarded as a natural barrier by many immortals, was nothing to him. Seeing this, Yi Tianli could not help but sigh. At first, he still had a little hope that Shin Jiuli was not the Divine Lord, but that Shin Yinma was the reincarnation of the Divine Lord. Now that he saw Shin Jiuli rushing in as if it was his own house, what else could he say? The other party was definitely the Divine Lord. Sure enough, Yi Tianli could not help but look towards Imo. Imo stood outside the palace gates and stared at the palace gates in a daze. She vaguely felt that the palace gates looked very familiar. She didn't follow Shin Jiuli into the palace because she knew that if Shin Jiuli didn't open the palace gates, an outsider like her wouldn't be able to enter. Shin Jiuli was probably concerned about the children who were trapped inside, so he rushed in directly. Imo. Yi Tianli actually had the urge to take the opportunity to run away. However, he also knew that the monk could run away but the temple could not. If he were to run away now, Shin Jiuli and the other person would definitely not spare him. At that time he would die even more miserably. Therefore he could only bite the bullet and try to get close to Imo. After all, he had been with her for nearly 2 years. Even if there was no love, there was still friendship. For the sake of these 2 years of friendship, he hoped that Imo would put in a good word for him. Imo finally turned around to look at him. She looked him up and down and suddenly smiled sweetly. Her smile made Yi Tianli absent-minded for a moment. He only felt that her smile was as if there were flowers flying from the sky. However, what she said next made Yi Tianli feel as if he had been hit by a stick. Yi Tianli, which hand did you use to carry little Nianma? This sentence was obviously malicious. Yi Tianli's face changed and he took a step back. Imo. Imo still looked at him with a smile. Chapter 1668. Imo was still looking at him with a smile, but her eyes were already looking at his 2 arms. Or should I say, you used both of your hands? She stretched out her small hand, and the Zhutian sword slowly appeared in her palm. Yi Tianli had goosebumps all over his body. His face was pale. Imo, I did not mean to hurt Nianma. Imo's voice was cold. If you wanted to hurt him, do you think you can still live? How dare he kidnap someone in her palace? He even took away her most precious baby. She pointed the tip of the sword at Yi Tianli. My patience is limited. If you don't answer me, I have to choose myself. If she let him choose, he would not be able to keep both of his arms. Yi Tianli knew that he could not escape today, so he had to stretch out his right arm. Use it. As soon as he said the word, a gust of wind swept past, and he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his arm. He opened his eyes with sweat all over his forehead and saw that half of his right arm was gone. It was not cut off but vaporized. Blood gushed out from the wound, and Yi Tianli's forehead instantly broke out in cold sweat. The pain from the Zhutian sword was excruciating. He raised his hand to seal the acupoints to stop the bleeding, but the pain almost made him unable to stand. He looked at Imo with a pale face. He could not believe that she would treat him so coldly. Imo, you are so cruel. He whispered. A demon was a demon. No matter how good he used to be to her, as long as he let her down once, he would suffer the most tragic revenge. Although only one of his arms was cut off, the wound from the Zhutian sword was not something he could withstand. Without the antidote, he would not be able to live for more than 3 days. He was also arrogant, so he did not want to beg her again. He smiled sadly. Imo, take care. He turned and was about to leave. Suddenly, a small green bottle flew to his feet, and Imo's voice came from behind him. This is the antidote. Yi Tianli was stunned and subconsciously grabbed the antidote bottle. He held it tightly in his hand and looked at Imo with a complicated expression. Imo only replied with one word, go away. Yi Tianli did not dare to say anything else. He hurriedly grabbed the bottle of antidote, bowed his head and thanked her. Then he staggered away. Imo looked at the tip of the sword that was still dripping with blood. His eyes flickered slightly, but no one knew what he was thinking. Mother. A small figure rushed out and hugged her leg. Imo sheathed his sword and looked at the little girl at his feet. Her cheeks were rosy and her eyes were watery. It was obvious that she hadn't suffered much. Imo finally breathed a sigh of relief. She bent over and picked him up, rubbing his head and feet to make sure there were no external or internal injuries. She was still a little puzzled. You look pretty good. Why didn't you answer the person outside who was screaming for you? Shin Yanma snorted. He is the bad guy who kidnapped Yanma. I just won't say anything. I just want him to be anxious outside. IMO, the little guy was already so scheming at such a young age. IMO couldn't bear to let go of the baby in his arms. The baby was so soft and tender in his arms that IMO couldn't bear to let go. But so what if he couldn't bear it? What was not hers would not be hers after all. She looked up and saw Shinjuli leaning against the palace door. His eyes were unpredictable and looking at her. There seemed to be gentleness at the bottom of his eyes. The wind blew his clothes and set off the vermilion palace door behind him. It was like a painting. Amo's heart skipped a beat and looked away. Chapter 1669. Now that she had seen the child and knew that he was indeed unharmed, she was relieved. It was time for her to go back to her own place. Although she thought so, she could not bear to leave the little baby in her arms. Shin Yinma did not know what she was thinking. He hugged her neck and felt wronged. Mother, why didn't you come to see me yesterday? I was waiting there for you. I wanted to go back to see you, but I was afraid that you would say that I did not keep my promise. In the end I was caught by someone. Amo still felt guilty about this. She could not help but kiss him on his little face. Yinma, you are such a good boy. It is all my fault. I did not keep my promise and caused you to be arrested. She took out a toy that was difficult to understand and put it in Yinma's hand. Here, this is for you. Shin Yinma smiled. This is the first time that mother has given me a toy. Logically speaking, a child at this age should play with a rattle drum. However, this child was too smart. It was inappropriate to give him a rattle drum. For the past few days she had been thinking of a gift for the child, but she could not find a suitable one. Later she had an idea and made one herself. It was a very difficult Rubik's Cube toy. Even she did not expect to be able to make it. Little Nyenma played with it for a while and immediately fell in love with it. He played with it in her arms. Shinjuli's eyes were fixed on the mother and daughter. However, he did not come over. When Amo put the toy in little Nyenma's hand, he seemed to have guessed something. He slowly walked over. Don't talk outside. Let's go in. Amo secretly took a breath. When she was about to give the child to him and leave, she heard Shinjuli's directed audio. I know that you want to leave, but the child has just been a little frightened. He has just seen you and is still in shock. Do you have the heart to leave him now? Amo was speechless. She looked at the child in her arms. His lips were red and his teeth were white. He did not look frightened at all. He was using the child to trick her again. Shinjuli sighed softly and continued without changing his expression. When I went in, his eyes were swollen from crying. He was curled up in a corner and trembling. I used my divine power to treat him and pacify his soul. Only then was he able to look much more normal. In fact, he is still very afraid. His words made Amo's heart ache. She could be cruel to anyone but little Nyenma. While she was deep in thought, Shinjuli was already facing the child. Nyenma, why don't you invite your mother in? Little Nyenma did not know that his father had used him as a trump card. He immediately hugged his mother's neck and said, Mother, let's go in. The scenery inside is so beautiful, the palace is so big, and there are so many divine beasts. Mother will definitely like it when she sees it. Looking at little Nyenma's bright eyes, Amo could not bear to leave him behind. Shinjuli seemed to know what she was worried about. Again he smiled and said, Don't worry. Our engagement has been cancelled. Are you still afraid that I will do something to you? I'm a god after all. Amo glanced at him coldly and sent him a telepathic message. You're a fraud. She strode toward the door of the palace. She would go in. Who was afraid of who? She would go in to play with the child for a while and take a look at the layout of her palace. He had already seen everything in her Mo palace. It would be a waste if she did not take a look at it. Chapter 1670. Besides, Shinjuli was a god, and with little Nyenma by his side, he would not do anything immoral. Moreover, her magical power was not to be trifled with. If he really dared to do anything to her, she definitely had the ability to destroy his Fanteon Palace. The gate of the Fanteon Palace was more like a wizardry barrier than a gate. Usually, only the Divine Lord and those who had the bloodline of the Divine Lord could freely enter and leave. Of course, if the Divine Lord wanted guests to enter, he would have to open the gate so that outsiders could enter. The Fanteon Palace had always been covered by a clear cover. Even if people stood in front of it, they could not see its full appearance. It was like a mirage. After Shinjiuli opened the gate of the Fantian Palace, the layer of the cover disappeared and finally revealed its true appearance. What majestic, what magnificent, what resplendent, what resplendent, what resplendent, what resplendent, none of these could describe the imposing manner of the Fantian Palace. The only feeling it gave people was shock. It was like a wanderer struggling in the desert suddenly saw the most beautiful and eye-catching mirage. It made people want to worship this building when they saw it. Imo stood outside and looked at the Fantian Palace a few times. She vaguely felt that it was familiar. Then, she looked at Shinjiuli who was standing at the gate and suddenly felt that this building was very compatible with this person. This building seemed to have become spiritual and had become a spirit. The Divine Lord. Tens of thousands of years ago, the archenemy. However, she did not expect to be entangled like this today. Imo had a rather strange feeling in her heart. She strode in with the child in her arms. The purple bamboo forest, the sea of clouds, and the looming pavilions in the clouds. Every scene was beautiful to the extreme. It was strange that no one had entered the Fantian Palace for tens of thousands of years, but there was no sense of decadence and desolation. Whether it was the flowers, trees, or the pavilions, they all looked as if they had been trimmed and cleaned from time to time. Imo stepped on the green jade cobblestones, and on both sides of the fiery red maple forest. She lowered her head and asked the child in her arms, "What frightened you here?" Shin Yinma blinked his eyes. He was not frightened. He was only anxious because he could not find the way out when he first came in. Yinma was not afraid. I thought it was fun inside. I kept running around. If father did not come in and carry me out, I would have continued to walk around. Imo glanced at Shinjiuli who was walking beside him. Shinjiuli coughed softly. "Yinma, did you cry when you entered this place?" "I cried. I cried when I couldn't get out." "Then did you cower under that wall and tremble?" Shinjiuli pointed in the direction of a palace wall. Shin Yinma scratched his head. "I found a hole there. I wanted to go in but it was very cold when I got close. Therefore he shivered." Shinjiuli turned to look at Imo and said matter-of-factly, "She cried." She shrank into a corner and shivered. "I'm not wrong." "Imo, Shinjiuli, you can be more shameless." Mother, there are mythological beasts over there. Let me take you to see them." Shin Yinma struggled to move his body in one direction. Cheong Chi, Swan and I, Zhu Long, Zhu Ke, and some other mythological beasts were either in the lake, on the shore, on both sides of the road, or under the eaves. Some were standing or lying down. Whether it was the scales, feathers, or the colors of the claws, all of them were lifelike. It was as if they could come to life with just a breath. Chapter 1671. She was right. These mythological beasts were all stone statues, but she could not tell what material they were made of. Shin Yinma had already jumped down from the ground and climbed on the back of a Cheong Chi. He stood on top of it and said, "Mother, these mythological beasts look so majestic." He then hugged the Cheong Chi's big mouth and said, "Yinma is also majestic." Imo laughed and said, "Little fool, no matter how majestic it looks, it is still made of stone. If you really want to be majestic, then ride on the real one." When she first heard Nyenma talking about the mythological beasts, she was shocked. She was also a little relieved that little Nyenma did not provoke the mythological beasts when he came in alone. Now that she knew that the mythological beasts were fake, she was naturally relieved. She had already looked at the layout of the Fantian Palace. It was indeed a few levels higher than her Mo Palace. However, it was not surprising. The Fantian Palace was the original residence of the Divine Lord. Nobody knew how many times it had been built. Naturally, even a stone could show its elegance. Her Mo Palace was only built less than 2 years ago. It had not really settled down yet. It was normal that it was not as good as the Fantian Palace. However, she did not know where her residence was tens of thousands of years ago. Perhaps it was not worse than the Fantian Palace. Originally, she was not curious about where she lived. According to her, wherever the mountains are, there are no bones to be buried. Wherever my heart is, that is my home. However, now that she saw the beautiful property of her old rival from tens of thousands of years ago, she began to feel competitive and began to miss her old residence. Of course, Shin Yinma did not know that his mother's thoughts had begun to wander. He sat on the back of the Cheongqi and was happily kicking his little feet. He even used his fingers to pick the Cheongqi's nostrils. "Little boy, don't destroy the cultural relics," Imo said and took a step forward to teach Shin Yinma a lesson. Unexpectedly, when her fingers just touched Shin Yinma's little hand, the stone Cheongqi suddenly moved. It suddenly let out an earth-shattering sneeze. Imo was not prepared and subconsciously took a step back. She did not know what her heel was, so she stumbled and fell into someone's arms. Be careful. A familiar smell entered her nose. Amo's heart skipped a beat. When she was about to get up, the other party had already let go of her. At the same time, the Cheongqi's 4 feet carrying Shen Yinma rose into the air. Naturally, Shen Yinma was also shocked. He staggered and fell from the top. However, just as he slid down Cheongqi's body, Cheongqi opened its mouth and swallowed him whole. All of this happened too quickly, so quickly that no one could react in time. By the time Imo realized it, Shen Yinma was already gone. It had been swallowed. It had been swallowed. Her facial expression changed drastically. Yinma. She quickly slapped the gigantic Cheongqi that had suddenly come to life. Shen Jiuli waved his sleeve and a white light shot out, cutting off Amo's red light midway. Thus, Imo watched as the large blue Cheongqi spread its wings in the air and flew away in the blink of an eye. With a splash, it jumped into the vast lake in the distance and disappeared without a trace. Imo, her hands and feet were cold. She slapped Shen Jiuli, who had suddenly gone crazy. You're crazy. He actually watched the child being swallowed without reacting. She slapped him with anger. Once the wind from her palm was released, it would be filled with an evil aura that could destroy half of the scenery here. However, before she could release the wind from her palm, Shen Jiuli moved at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of her and raised his hand to hook her wrist. Chapter 1672. However, before she could do anything, Shen Jiuli was already in front of her in the blink of an eye. He raised his hand and grabbed her wrist. Imo, don't worry. Yinma is fine. Her right wrist was caught, so she could not do anything. She was about to hit him again with her left hand, but she was stunned when she heard what he said. While she was in a daze, he had already hooked his arm around her waist and flew up. I'll take you to see it. Imo was worried about little Yinma, so she did not notice that he was holding her waist. She stared at the lake in the distance. He was swallowed. How can he be fine? Before she could finish her sentence, she saw the waves rolling on the lake, and Cheongqi's broad back was exposed. Little Yinma was riding on Cheongqi's back. He was so happy that he danced. This is so fun. Cheongqi's head popped out of the water and sneezed loudly again. Like a whale, it sprayed out waves that were about 30 feet high. The white waves flew down, but they dispersed on top of little Yinma's head and did not splash on him at all. Cheongqi turned around and gently licked little Yinma with its big tongue. Little Yinma was also naughty. He directly used his arms to hug the big tongue and played like a swing. Cheongqi opened its big mouth and slowly retracted its tongue. A moment later, little Yinma sat on its tongue and looked out while holding its fangs. Cheongqi swam in the lake with him in its mouth. Little Yinma's giggles could be heard all over the lake. Imo was speechless. She finally felt relieved. It was only at this moment that she realized that Shen Jiuli was still holding her waist. Her pretty face was gloomy and she was about to break free. Unexpectedly, Shen Jiuli let go of her before she could say anything. He even took a step back and sincerely apologized. I have offended you. Imo was about to scold him, but she could not say anything in front of his gentlemanly behavior. What is going on? Imo's eyes were still fixed on Cheongqi's body in the lake. He was afraid that this fellow would be so happy that it would close its mouth and chew the little guy inside. They are indeed the mythological beasts under my mount. They rely on the aura of God to be reborn. Little Yinma has the aura of God, so he activated them, Shen Jiuli explained. Then why don't you just activate them? But you let a child take the risk. Imo still had lingering fears as he recalled the scene earlier. They have been sleeping for tens of thousands of years. Whoever can awaken them again, they will recognize that person as their first master. They will absolutely obey their first master and will not harm him. Shen Jiuli continued to impart to her the knowledge of the mythological beasts. This child was his most precious treasure, so he naturally wanted to find some guardian beasts for his son. As for the divine beasts in his courtyard, they were all ancient divine beasts with extraordinary power. Ordinary immortals and devils couldn't even get close to them. With them by Yinma's side to protect him, he would feel more at ease. Therefore, he directly handed the task of awakening the sleeping divine beasts to his son. In the future, even if he was not by his son's side, no one would be able to plot against the little guy. What happened in the Imo palace would not happen again. Imo glanced at the surrounding divine beasts that had not yet been awakened. Are they also? She was relieved. Although there were no guards in the Fantian palace, with these divine beasts here, it would not be a problem for Yinma to go anywhere he wanted. Perhaps she should take the opportunity to leave while Nianma was having fun in the lake to prevent the little guy from crying. Chapter 1673. Well, since he is having fun here, it is time for me to leave. You can take care of him yourself, Imo said. She waited for a moment but did not hear Shinjuli's answer. Subconsciously, she turned around and saw that she was the only one left on the shore. Shinjuli was nowhere to be found. Imo was speechless. She quickly scanned her surroundings but still did not see Shinjuli. How could he disappear at such a critical moment? Imo looked at the child in the lake and the dangerous Cheongqi. She did not dare to leave. It was impossible for such a small child to be alone with no adults. It was too dangerous. Shinjuli was missing, so she had to stay here and watch over him. Imo had the impulse to curse Shinjuli. After he tricked her into coming here, he did not do anything to her. He was even very polite. However, he had helped her, held her, and hugged her. Now he even left her here alone to take care of the child. She could not find a chance to leave. Mother, do you want to come up and play? Cheongqi swam to the shore. Shin Yinma held one of Cheongqi's teeth and stretched out half of his body. He opened his little hand to her eagerly. The veins on Amo's forehead twitched. Yinma, go and play on Cheongqi's back. He had been staying in Cheongqi's mouth for a long time, and it always made her feel scared. She was afraid that Cheongqi would bite him in half on a whim. Mother, you want to play too? Yinma will go on its back. Shin Yinma was negotiating with her, and the kid even rubbed his little belly on Cheongqi's teeth. Imo was afraid that his intestines would be torn apart, so she had to agree. She jumped on Cheongqi's back. Cheongqi seemed to only be sensitive to the bloodline of God. When Imo jumped on its back, it immediately felt offended and all the scales on its body stood up. It made a threatening sound. Don't be rude to my mother. Shin Yinma threatened as he climbed out of the Cheongqi's mouth and onto its back. Cheongqi probably understood, but was afraid of hurting its little master's delicate skin, so wherever the little fellow crawled, the scales would fall. But after all, it was a mythical beast that only obeyed God or God's bloodline. It was not willing to let Imo sit on its back, so it secretly made its scales into spikes where Imo sat, like a nail board, in order to make Imo retreat. Imo's eyes flashed slightly. Suddenly he smiled at Shin Yinma. Yinma, you may leave first. Shin Yinma was surprised. Mother? Be good. Go down first. If you're not obedient, Mother will leave by herself. This sentence was more effective than any threat to Shin Yinma. He immediately jumped down and stood on the shore. Mother, be careful. Just as he went down, Cheongqi flew up with a whoosh. It flew upside down, straight up, 180-degree somersaults, 360-degree turns, and sharp steel knives appeared all over its body. It plunged into the water and rolled in circles. Cheongqi used all the methods he could think of to get rid of them. Unfortunately, Imo seemed to be growing on its back and it could not get rid of her at all. In the beginning, Cheongqi still cared about Shin Yinma's reputation. He was afraid that he would hurt Imo, so he only wanted to get rid of her, so he used a gentler method. Later on, the methods he used became more and more violent. It was an aquatic beast, so he used all kinds of water spells, but it still did not work. Chapter 1674. It carried her for almost an hour, but it still could not get the person on its back off. It could not help but feel a little discouraged. Are you done? It's my turn. Imo said coldly on its back. She stretched out her little hand and gently patted the back of its neck. Therefore Cheongqi screamed again. It suddenly jumped into the air and fell into the water. 2 hours later, Cheongqi was exhausted. It lay in the water and gasped for breath. Its scales were all subdued. Imo was still sitting on its back. She smiled and patted its head. Not only is your master not easy to mess with, but I am also not easy to mess with. Cheongqi whimpered, but it did not dare to be angry anymore. It was one of the 4 most ferocious beasts in the ancient times. In its life, it only listened to the teachings of God. Tens of thousands of years ago, it had done evil in the 6 realms. Many immortals and demons wanted to subdue it, but they all failed. It was only after the Divine Lord went and subdued it. It was very proud of itself. Although it had just woken up from a deep sleep for tens of thousands of years, it was confident that ordinary immortals and demons would not be able to get close to it. It did not expect that the delicate little girl in front of it could control it. In the law of the mythological beast, it only obeyed the strong. Therefore Cheongqi finally became obedient. Mother, you are awesome. Mother, can you play with Nyenma? Shin Yinma rushed up and climbed onto Cheongqi's back. Imo held him in her arms and took him for a ride on Cheongqi. Shinjuli sat on top of a tree not far away. He looked at the mother and daughter who were playing with each other, and a smile appeared on his face. All he wanted was the warmth of today. The woman he loved and his sensible son were in front of him. They were all happy under his protection. He looked down and looked at his hands. This was a pair of hands that could turn the world upside down, but it was not enough to change all the fates. He only wanted to protect his woman and child for a little longer before they became very strong. The mother and child were having fun. Even Amo seemed to have forgotten everything. She hugged her son and laughed happily. Ever since they reunited, this was the first time he had seen her so happy and carefree. Shinjuli stared at her intently. It was as if he wanted to carve her figure into the depths of his soul. After watching for a long time, he turned around and left. Where did that bastard Shinjuli go? Did he still want his son? Imo rode Cheongchi and took his son for a ride while silently observing his surroundings. One was to understand the architectural layout of Fantian Palace, and the other was to find Shinjuli. This person couldn't just abandon his son to her just to keep her here, right? What was this? Another way to keep her here? After playing for a while, she felt a little angry, as if she had been tricked by him again. Mother, Nyenma is hungry. Shin Nyenma had enough fun and finally thought of his tummy. Coincidentally, his stomach growled a few times. Imo rubbed her eyebrows. She was not familiar with Fantian Palace, so she did not know where to find food. Moreover, this place had been sealed for tens of thousands of years. Even if there were still food stored, it would have been rotten long ago. Should she bring Nyenma back to Mo Palace and raise him there? She had gathered a lot of top chefs there. Little Nyenma also liked to eat the food that they made. She just had the idea of going back home. Chapter 1675. Just as she was about to return home, she suddenly heard the sound of a zither coming from the purple bamboo forest in the distance. The sound of the zither pierced through the clouds and water, making people feel like they were bathed in a spring breeze. Amo's heart jumped. Shinjuli. This person had her take care of the child here, but he was leisurely playing the zither. Damn it. When Cheongchi heard the zither, its two little ears perked up. It folded its wings and flew towards the sound of the zither. The swallow grass swayed in the wind like silk. This grassland was surrounded by purple bamboo. In the middle of the grassland, there was an extremely lush and tall tree. Its leaves were like red maple, but the color was much brighter than red maple. It was like a raging fire, shining like the clouds. Shinjuli was dressed in a white robe as he sat under a tree. He placed a guqin on his lap and started to play. A series of notes flowed from his fingertips. The fiery red maple leaves fell and swirled around him as they fluttered in the wind. The scenery was beautiful to the extreme. Imo had to admit that Shinjuli was truly beautiful. He didn't need to do anything deliberately. He just sat there casually, and it was a beautiful scene that even the painters couldn't paint. The sound of the zither was so beautiful that Cheongchi was afraid of disturbing the person playing it. It folded its wings and landed on the ground. It was rare for such a huge body to not make any noise when it landed. Not even a blade of grass was disturbed. Imo had a stomach full of anger, but the sound of the zither had the effect of cleansing the soul. It actually made the anger in her heart slowly dissipate like a deflated balloon. She originally wanted to scold him, but after landing she couldn't bear to interrupt him. She stopped in place. It was better to wait until he finished playing and then deal with him. Fortunately, this song wasn't long. It was only 2 or 3 minutes. When he plucked the last note, the sound of the zither curled up and stopped. The maple leaves that were flying around him also floated down. Your Excellency is so leisurely and carefree. You don't care about your son? Amo's cold voice finally scolded him. Shinjuli raised his head to look at her. His gaze was gentle. With you looking after him, I'm very relieved. Amo, she sneered again. So you kidnapped me to help you look after your child. Shinjuli stood up and walked towards her step by step. Imo raised his eyebrows and looked at him, not retreating a single step. Others were afraid of his divine might, but she wasn't. Her aura was not any weaker than his. Although she was small, her aura was not small. Her powerful aura spread out in all directions, causing Cheongchi to tremble and take a step back. Shinjuli walked up to her and asked, "Are you very angry?" Imo snorted but didn't say anything. His figure was tall and big, while her body was relatively short. Compared to him, she could be considered petite and dainty. That was the difference in height between men and women, but not the difference in aura between gods and devils. His figure almost covered her entire body. The feeling of being lower in height made her uncomfortable, but if she suddenly became taller, it would seem a little intentional. How about she stand on the big rock next to her? In the time she was stunned, Shinjuli had already approached her. Imo wanted to retreat, but she wasn't willing. If she didn't retreat, she couldn't suppress him with her aura. After a moment of hesitation, his hand fell on her shoulder. Why are you like a little hedgehog? Are you afraid of me? Afraid of him? Imo curled her lips into a smile. You think too much. Just as she was about to rudely slap his hand away, his hand moved automatically. Like magic, he held out a bouquet of flowers. This is for you. How about it as my apology? Chapter 1676. Oh God, his father sent her flowers again. How obsessed was his father to be with flowers? He kept getting thrown away and he kept getting sent away. He was so strong. Shen Yinma could not bear to look anymore, so he turned his head away. Imo looked at the flowers in front of her. The light blue buds were slightly transparent, and there seemed to be a fluorescent glow on the buds. It was a species that she had never seen before. How many of the flowers that she had thrown away were the ones that she had seen before? Every time she saw these flowers, she had an illusion that she did not know enough about plants. She was very knowledgeable about flowers and plants. However, compared to the flowers that he had sent her, she felt that she was very naive. To be honest, this bouquet of flowers was especially beautiful. Moreover, it was very suitable for her. If it was from someone else, she might have accepted it. However, it was from him. She had already habitually wanted to destroy it. Therefore, she smiled and raised her hand to take it. As usual, she wanted to blow all the flowers away in one breath. However, he had already said, "This is the last bouquet of flowers that I have sent you. Can you let it bloom a little longer?" The last bouquet? It seemed that he finally realized that flowers could not move her, so he would not send her any more in the future. At least he knew what was good for him. Imo looked at him and then looked at the flowers in her hand. She smiled faintly. Okay, I will let it bloom a little longer. She began to pull the petals one by one. When she pulled them into her palm, she gently blew them away. She watched the petals fly away. Therefore, when one petal flew away, she pulled another one. Shen Yinma was speechless. Mother, you are awesome. Shinjuli's eyes flickered slightly. Perhaps he had been beaten up too many times, so he was no longer angry. He even raised his hand and gently rubbed her hair. This is a good idea. You can take your time to tear it. Before Imo could dodge, he had already stepped back a few steps away from her. He smiled and watched her tear the petals. Imo was speechless. She originally did this to make him angry, but unexpectedly, it did not make him angry. Instead, she felt that it was a little silly to tear the petals one by one. Therefore, after a while, she stopped. Then she opened her mouth and blew at the stamen. Suddenly, the petals flew like rain, and the blue petals fell like stars. Not only that, but there was also a lot of pollen in the stamen. When she blew, the pollen wafted out and inevitably inhaled into her nose. The fragrance of the flowers was intoxicating and faint, but it actually made her feel refreshed. It felt as if she had eaten a ginseng fruit. Even the blood in her body suddenly became lively and flowed rapidly in her body. Her qi and blood were flowing too fast. Before she could ask Shinjuli what he was up to, she subconsciously took a step back and wanted to meditate. Suddenly, the light in front of her eyes dimmed, and her lips felt warm. Someone had suddenly sucked on them. She was fighting against her bloodline that was about to go berserk. She never thought that he would take this opportunity to kiss her. With a loud bang in her head, he had already skillfully pried open her teeth and blew into her mouth. The qi was extremely clear, and before she could react, it had already entered her stomach. Bastard, he actually kissed her in front of the child. Imo was enraged and sent a palm strike towards him. If she did not beat him up, he would not know why the flowers were so red. However, this time Shinjuli was obviously prepared. Just as her palm was about to hit him, it was directly caught by him. Then he blew a second breath into her mouth. This time the qi was scorching hot, and it went directly into her throat. Just like the first breath, it went straight into her stomach. Chapter 1677. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Coupled with the fact that Imo's blood and qi were surging too violently, her brain was slightly sluggish. By the time she had fully reacted and was about to use her devil arts to attack him, he had already let go of her and retreated a few steps. Imo was fuming with rage. Her pretty face turned cold. Bastard. She flipped her palms and a red light flew out like lightning. It exploded in the air and turned into countless sharp blades. Like a net, it covered Shinjuli's head. Mother. Little Nyenma screamed. He was so scared that his throat was about to break. Amo's heart tightened, and she subconsciously retracted her magical power. Don't retract it. Shinjuli suddenly slammed his palm toward her. The white light was blazing and whistling toward her. Was he crazy? Amo was furious. She simply used all her strength and slammed toward Shinjuli. Shinjuli waved his sleeves and protected Shin Yinma, who was standing next to him, with a wizardry barrier. Then he used his palm to catch Amo's attack. The most important thing in a battle between masters was to be distracted. With such a slight delay, his body was hit by the red light. His face turned a little pale, but he did not retreat. Instead, he moved forward and circled around Amo as if he was tempting her to attack. Amo's brain was buzzing, and there seemed to be something screaming and roaring in her head. When she was playing with Shin Yinma, she was in a peaceful mood. Her pair of eyes unknowingly turned black, but now her eyes were completely red, redder than the setting sun. Her mind was blank, and only inexplicable thoughts of killing were raging in her chest. She seemed to have gone crazy. She slammed her palms one after another without paying attention to whether she hit the target or not. Strangely, the more she slammed her palms with all her strength, the more comfortable the blood in her body was. It was as if the devil in her body was finally released and finally had a chance to explode. Finally, she gradually slowed down as if the devil was finally released. Her mind gradually cleared up. When reason finally crept back into her brain, she abruptly retracted her palm. Looking at everything around her, she was stunned. The grassland was gone, and the purple bamboo forest in the distance looked as if it had been swept by a typhoon, collapsing to the ground. The lush tree in the middle of the grassland was also gone, leaving only a bottomless pit in its place. Even some of the pavilions and buildings in the distance were completely destroyed. It collapsed all over the ground. As far as the eye could see, everything seemed to have been swept away by a typhoon of more than 10 magnitude, and no one could see their original appearance anymore. This destructive power, she subconsciously looked around, but all she could see were broken walls, broken branches, and broken leaves. She couldn't see anyone else at all. Where was Shinjuli? Where was Nyenma? Could it have been destroyed by her demonic nature? Amo's heart was beating wildly. She didn't know if it was because she was exhausted or because she was nervous, but her fingers were trembling in her sleeves. Her figure flashed and she couldn't help but look around. In the deep pit, under the fallen purple bamboo, among the broken walls, she had searched all the places where people could be hidden, but she couldn't find any trace of the father and son. Could it be? Shinjuli was the Divine Lord. How could he be so weak? She was getting more and more nervous and her legs began to weaken. She stood at the edge of the deep pit and was about to jump into the pit to look for him. Suddenly, someone gently patted her shoulder. "Are you looking for me?" The voice was as cold as usual. Amo suddenly turned around and looked at the person who was standing behind her. Chapter 1678. Shinjuli was standing behind her, an arm's length away from her. He did not seem to be injured. His white robe was still dazzling, and his demeanor was still elegant. However, his face was slightly pale. Shin Yinma was sitting in the wizardry barrier behind him. He looked confused as if he had just woken up. He looked at her and smiled. His voice was gentle and teasing. "Are you worried about me?" Amo finally felt relieved. Hearing his words, she rubbed her eyebrows and said coldly, "I am worried about Nyenma. Fortunately, he is fine. He will be fine with me protecting him." Shinjuli finally opened the wizardry barrier and let the little guy out. Shin Yinma cried as soon as he landed. "Mother, father, please don't fight. I'm scared." Amo regretted it. What was wrong with her just now? It was like an active volcano that had erupted. In the beginning, she wanted to give him a slap to teach him a lesson for his lecherous behavior. Later, she did not know what happened. She could not control herself. "Nyenma, your mother and I did not fight. We were just learning from each other." Shinjuli carried his son and comforted him. But mother was so fierce just now. Shin Yinma was frightened. Shinjuli was a little regretful. When he led Imo to attack, her attack was too fierce. He did not seal little Nyenma's 5 senses in time and let him see something. Imo seemed to be possessed by a demon. She was surrounded by a red light. She used all her strength in every attack, so he had to try his best to resist and guide her. "Nyenma, come here. Let me see if I hurt you." Ning Shuama looked at her son's pale face and felt even more regretful. She wanted to carry him over to have a look. Little Nyenma shrank into Shinjuli's arms and subconsciously avoided her hand. There was a flash of fear in his eyes as he looked at her. Imo was shocked by his expression. It was as if she was pricked by a needle. She slowly withdrew her hand. Then she looked up at Shinjuli and asked, "What did you do to me just now?" Her condition just now was obviously abnormal. It seemed to have something to do with his flower and the two breaths. Now, her blood was no longer boiling, but she felt extremely tired all over, as if she had just finished running a marathon. To treat your chronic illness. Shinjuli smiled faintly. How do you feel now? Amo's heart skipped a beat. How did he know she had a chronic illness? She raised her eyebrows and looked at him. What chronic illness do I have? Does not age count? Shinjuli replied. Amo was speechless. She really couldn't grow up. She had looked like this when she first woke up on this continent. 3 years later she was still the same. Her height and appearance were still that of a lowly. However, she didn't really care about her appearance. Whether she was a lowly or a mature woman, it made no difference to her. What does that have to do with you? It has a lot to do with this. Shinjuli looked at her from head to toe. He even paused for a moment at her underdeveloped chest. His gaze was too sharp. It was as if he was a pervert. Amo's ears turned red. If little Nianma was not here, she would have called him a pervert. She did not want to face him anymore, so she turned and walked away. Shuama, do you really not like me anymore? He suddenly asked behind her. Amo paused for a moment and finally turned around. She looked at him sincerely. Divine Lord, have we broken off the engagement? Chapter 1679. Amo paused for a moment and finally turned around to look at him sincerely. Divine Lord, have we broken off the engagement? Yes. That's it. There's no engagement between us. Or really don't have any feelings for you. In the future you'll go your own way and I'll go mine. I really don't think there's any need for me to answer your question just now. Also, I am not Shuema. I am Amo. Shinjuli looked down and smiled. Well, take care. He did not intend to ask her to stay. Amo then turned around and left. She was about to turn around the corner. Mother? Shin Yinma could not help but call out from behind. Amo's footsteps paused for a moment, but he didn't look back. His figure gradually disappeared into the purple bamboo forest, and his shadow could no longer be seen. Shin Yinma cried out loud. Father, does mother not want us anymore? Shinjuli's face was pale. He rubbed his hand on his head. Don't worry. Your mother will not abandon you. His father had never lied to him. Naturally he would not this time. Shin Yinma was finally relieved. His stomach was full of hunger. He pursed his lips. Father, I am hungry. Shinjuli raised his sleeve, and a table appeared on the ground. There were a few dishes and a few pastries on the table. It looked very sumptuous. The tempting fragrance of the food rushed into his nose. Shin Yinma immediately cheered and jumped down from the ground to the table. Wow, there are so many delicious food. He sat there and wolfed down the food. Ah, these are all things that mother likes to eat. Father, you should have asked mother to stay for a meal just now. She will be happy to see these. Shin Yinma's little mouth was full, and he felt a little regretful. Shinjuli sat at the side and watched his son eat. He did not speak. He also did not move. After a while, Shin Yinma was finally full. As a child, he was full of energy. He pulled Shinjuli's hand and asked him to bring him around. Shinjuli patted his head and said, Nyinma, you will be a senior immortal in the future. A senior immortal should be independent. It is not right for you to always need your parents to follow you. Be good and go play by yourself. I will test you on your homework later. Her words made Shin Yinma puff out his chest. All right, I will go and play by myself. He then ran away. Shinjuli glanced at Cheongchi who had just returned. Cheongchi shuddered and immediately followed little Nyinma. As soon as Shin Yinma left, Shinjuli's body swayed slightly and almost fell to the ground. He took advantage of the situation and fell to the ground. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth and his face became as white as snow. Although he had resolved most of Amo's crazy attack, he was still injured. His blood was boiling and he almost could not hold on. He sat there and meditated. The wind blew his robe as if he would disappear at any time. When Imo returned to Mo Palace, Shui Yilan and General Manager Himu were already impatient. When they saw her return, they were relieved. Unexpectedly, Shui Yilan was still wearing that pink robe. If other men were to wear this robe, it would make others feel terrified. But when he wore this robe, it was as exquisite as an ink painting, even more beautiful and dazzling than peach blossoms. Momo, are we still going on with the wedding? Shui Yilan followed her and smiled enchantingly. Imo waved her hand and said, You can leave now. She had successfully broken off the engagement, so there was no need for her to act. Chapter 1680. Shui Yilan's bewitching peach blossom eyes sparkled. Momo, actually, I don't mind making it real. I do mind. Imo answered straightforwardly and yawned lazily. Shui Yilan, you can return to your demon clan. Don't worry, I'll keep my promise to you. She was really tired after a day of torment. She just wanted to have a good sleep and didn't want to deal with anyone else. Shui Yilan's eyes flickered slightly. He paused and sighed softly. Momo, can I still come to see you in the future? Let's leave it to fate. Imo yawned again and turned to go back inside. Looking at her back, Shui Yilan was lost in thought for a moment. He knew that she was disgusted with the matters of love and love. Therefore this time he couldn't pester her like before. He had to take it slow. Imo returned to her bedroom and didn't think about anything. She slept soundly for a long time. She even had a dream. In the dream there were gusts of wind, dense fog, mountains collapsed, and rivers flowed backward. She and a man in white stood opposite each other. You and I love each other, so we're getting rid of evil for the people. A woman's voice floated in the air. She seemed to be joking. Marry me, or should I marry you? In your dreams. A cold voice pierced through the clouds. Along with these two words, a sword with flowing light flew in all directions. Imo shivered and woke up from her dream. She rubbed her forehead. She could still remember most of the scene in her dream, but she couldn't remember the appearance of the man in white. It seemed to be very handsome. She could still remember that voice. It seemed to be Shinjuli? Could it be that her dream was a scene from tens of thousands of years ago? She sat there and thought for a long time. Besides this scene, she couldn't remember anything else. In her dream, Shinjuli really didn't show any mercy to her. After she woke up, she seemed to be able to feel the cold and murderous intent. She yawned and patted her small mouth. It seemed like the rumors were true. She and he were really enemies tens of thousands of years ago. No wonder she felt that he was an eyesore when she saw him this time. After being engaged to him, she felt as if she was sitting on pins and needles. She thought of ways to break off this engagement. So this was the reason. She got up to wash her face and rinse her mouth. As she was combing her hair, she inadvertently looked into the bronze mirror and was suddenly stunned. In the mirror appeared a woman in her late 20s. She had large eyes, a small mouth, red lips, and white teeth. Her beauty was unparalleled. Her appearance was still the same as before, but she had grown quite a bit. She sat there and looked at the mirror for a moment. She raised her hand and touched her face. The woman in the mirror also raised her hand and touched her face. He had actually grown up. He grew up overnight. She used to look like she was 13 or 14 years old, but now she looked like she was 17 or 18 years old. She was like a flower that was about to bloom. It seemed that Shinjuli was telling the truth when he said that he wanted to treat her chronic illness. The flowers he gave her and the forced kiss at the end were all for this. She looked at herself in the mirror again and looked at her forehead. There was a cloud-shaped cinnabar mole on her forehead. It was very delicate and beautiful, adding to her beauty. She walked out of the hall. Head steward Himu was waiting outside. When he saw her like this, he was stunned. Devil? Devil Master? Imo smiled, a smile that could topple cities. She turned in a circle. How is it? Am I beautiful? Head steward Himu was so stunned that he almost stuttered. Beautiful. Beautiful. She was really too beautiful. He had never seen a woman more beautiful than the Devil Master. Chapter 1681. She was too pleasing to the eye. Manager Himu had never seen a woman more beautiful than the Devil Master. Especially her temperament. She was pure yet enchanting, enchanting yet charming. She had the innocence of a child yet the naivety of a young girl. They were clearly contradictory characteristics, but when they were concentrated on her, they were incomparably harmonious. Manager Himu almost couldn't move his eyes away. Although the original Imo also smiled, there was always an indescribable gloominess around her that made people feel an inexplicable sense of oppression when they were by her side. Now, however, that shadow was gone. She even had a bit of sunshine to her. Manager Himu finally remembered his mission. Devil Master, the courtyard next door, should we clear it out? That person was a supreme god. He definitely wouldn't come back. The Devil Master did not find him pleasing to the eye. With that courtyard there, it was inevitable that he would be displeased. Imo's gaze swept over the courtyard. Her vision blurred and she seemed to see him floating over. When she rubbed her eyes again, that person disappeared again. She was actually seeing things. He had been living there for the past few days. Every time she opened her eyes, she would see him. It had actually become a habit. It wasn't strange that she was seeing things. She felt inexplicably anxious. She waved her hand. I'll take care of it. You don't have to worry about it. Head steward Himu nodded and left. Imo had nothing to do, so she strolled around the courtyard next door. She paused at the door for a moment, then walked into his room. She rarely came here. Too many things had happened the last time she was here. She didn't have time to see the layout. Now that she had the time and the mood, she casually glanced around. The layout of the room was low-key yet grand. Whether it was the screen with the fox painting or the small jade ornaments on the table, all of them showed the owner's taste. His taste and taste were extraordinarily elegant. She vaguely felt that the layout here was familiar. Even the gums behind the screen looked familiar. It was as if she had lived in a place like this before. She walked over and sat on the gums. In a daze, she seemed to see a man and a woman rolling on the gums and kissing. The kiss was so passionate that she almost wanted to go to bed. Hey Guru. You still haven't given me an explanation. I don't want to have an unclear relationship with you. The woman finally pushed the man away. Shuama, hurry up and level up. The man's voice was hoarse as if he was holding something back. Finally, he let go of the woman. The woman turned around and sat up. Her face was as red as rouge. All right. You should leave quickly. My small temple can't accommodate a big bodhisattva like you. Then how about you go to my main hall? My temple is big enough to accommodate you. Go to your main hall? All right, give me a corresponding position. The temple is so big, it shouldn't be a problem for me to sit next to you, right? The woman giggled, almost hanging on the man's arm. The intimacy between them was obvious. It depends on your performance. The man replied to her and raised his hand to rub her head. I will definitely rise to level 8 within 2 years. The woman was full of confidence. Let's wait and see. Amo's heart skipped a beat. The hand that was stroking the gums trembled, and the illusion disappeared. The man just now should be Shinjuli, and the woman looked like herself. She subconsciously touched her face again. That woman's appearance was almost exactly the same as her current appearance. Chapter 1682. The only difference was the cinnabar mole on her forehead. Shuama's cinnabar mole was in the shape of a snowflake, while hers was in the shape of a cloud. Shuama. Could it be that her name was Shuama before she was reborn? She actually had such a deep entanglement with Shinjuli, and the layout of this house was really similar to the layout of the side hall she saw in the illusion. In other words, this house was decorated according to Shuema's original residence. It seemed that he was very infatuated with Shuema, and Shuema's love for him was also very obvious. But why did they separate? She suddenly felt a little flustered. She didn't know why, but whenever she thought about what happened before she was reborn, she subconsciously wanted to escape, as if there was a terrible thing hidden in it that she had to forget at all costs. She touched her chest with her fingers and could feel a magic seal there. It should be a memory that was sealed. The memory that made her use this kind of magic to seal must not be a good memory. She better not think about it. She didn't want to make things difficult for herself. And to break this seal she had to pay a huge price. It would take her 3/4 of her magic power. It wasn't worth it. She didn't want to think about it anymore. She stood up and looked at everything in the room. It seemed to be filled with the aura of Shinjuli and Shuema, which made her feel a little uncomfortable. She waved her sleeve and a red light flashed. Everything in the room disappeared. She had directly moved it to another dimension. The room was empty. She couldn't see anything anymore. There was no aura that he used to live here. She sighed slightly and walked out of the room. She saw the heavenly fire flower blooming in the flower bed. It stood there alone, with layers of petals stretched out and swaying in the breeze. Amo bent her fingers. She subconsciously wanted to destroy the flower that he had personally planted here. Suddenly, the image of him desperately protecting this flower flashed in her mind. Her fingertips stiffened and she couldn't cast the magic spell. Forget it. It's just a flower. It doesn't matter if it grows here. There's no need to destroy it so cleanly. Whether it lives or dies depends on its luck. She turned and walked out. The swing was still the same swing and the grass was still the same grass. Imo swung gently on the swing. Not far away the children were still playing. Everything returned to normal. Everything seemed to have returned to the beginning. The only thing that had changed was her state of mind and of course her appearance. She looked at the children and suddenly felt a little irritated. She missed little Nyenma. Time flowed like water. It had been more than 2 months since Shinjuli brought the children back to Brahma Palace. Since that time she hadn't seen them even once. In the past 2 months, she had participated in the Flower Appreciation Festival organized by the Celestial World. She was the Devil Master, so of course she was invited. Now the 4 seas are at peace and the 6 realms are at peace. The flower appreciation banquet held in the immortal world was just a way to bond with each other, just like the cocktail parties held by the upper class in modern times. The flower appreciation festival was extraordinarily grand. The leaders of the 6 realms gave the immortal realm a lot of face and almost all of them attended. Originally, Imo wasn't interested in these kinds of invitations. She had received all kinds of invitations before, but she had rejected them all without hesitation. However, this time she was probably too bored, so she unexpectedly agreed to attend. She thought that she would meet Shinjioli and his son at the Flower Appreciation Festival. Chapter 1683. Of course, she did not expect to meet Shinjioli. Both of them were born to be enemies. It was already fortunate that they did not fight when they met. It was better for them to meet as little as possible. She mainly missed little Nianma. The little guy had only been with her for slightly more than a month, but she could not let go of him. When she slept at night, she thought that the pillow next to her was him and hugged it in her arms. After all, the pillow was dead, so she could not feel it. She even had insomnia several times because of this. General Manager Heimu was a very considerate person. He actually got her a child who was about the same age as Nianma. The child looked very cute, but when she hugged the child, she could not feel the same way as when she hugged little Nianma. There was a strong sense of strangeness. She felt very awkward when she hugged the child, so she asked General Manager Heimu to send the child away. General Manager Heimu did not give up. He searched everywhere for such a small child and sent it to her so that she could feel it again. However, she did not feel it. Instead, she became more and more annoyed. In the end, she scolded General Manager Heimu and finally stopped him from sending the child away. She thought that she was just not used to it. Time was the best medicine to cure everything. As time went by, she would probably get used to it. However, she did not expect that she was getting more and more uncomfortable. In the end, she finally admitted that she missed her child. She missed little Nianma. There were a few times when she wanted to go to Fantian Palace, but when she thought of the harsh words she said before she left, she did not want to go anymore. Since she had already gone her separate ways with that person, what was the point of always thinking about his child? She did not see little Nianma at the Flower Appreciation Festival because Shinjioli did not go at all. She knew from the little immortals that the gate of Fantian Palace had been closed for the past 2 months. Even when the Celestial Emperor personally came to visit, he did not see anyone. The gate was not even open. If it were not for the faint white light emitted by the Divine Lord living in Fantian Palace, the Celestial Emperor would have thought that the Divine Lord had run away with her son. Of course, the Celestial Emperor wanted to invite the Divine Lord to this Flower Appreciation Festival, but she did not give him face at all. Since Imo did not see little Nianma, he felt that the Flower Appreciation Festival was rather boring. Hence, he went back after hanging around for a while. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. She felt that her longing for little Nianma was increasing day by day. She could not bring herself to do anything. Reporting to the Devil Master, the Demon King has come to visit. Chief Steward Heimu reported to her. Let him in. Imo ordered. The Demon King was naturally Shui Yilan. His red robe was like a raging fire. When he stood there, he looked like a big red flower blooming on the grass. It was quite refreshing. Recently, he often visited Mo Palace and had already become a frequent visitor. When it came to talking, he was very good at grasping the boundaries. When he saw that Imo was getting impatient, he would take the initiative to leave. He would not bother her and he would not come every day. Basically, he would come every 3 to 5 days. He had a lot of skills. He played the guqin well and he knew how to behave. He was also humorous and witty. He often told her some interesting things that happened in the 6 realms recently. It helped her a lot to relieve her loneliness. Shui Yilan came in with a happy face. When he saw Gu Shijiu sitting on the swing, he smiled. Momo, are you bored? Let's go out and have some fun, shall we? Imo paused on the swing. She seemed to have been a little more indoors recently. Chapter 1684. Imo paused on the swing. She did seem to be staying at home recently. It was good to go out and play. If she didn't go out soon, she felt like she would be bored out of her wits. Okay. She jumped down from the swing. Where are we going? How about the human world? Shui Yilan suggested. Imo frowned and subconsciously shook her head. No. She didn't know why, but she had some resistance to the human world. Then go to our demon world? Recently, the flowers in the demonic pond suddenly bloomed. They're very beautiful. Hey, don't the flowers in the pond only bloom once every 1,000 years? I heard that they bloomed once 3 years ago. Why are they blooming again now? There must be something wrong. Devil Master, were demons to begin with. Maybe they bloomed earlier under the nourishment of your magic power? Shuilan's smile was even more seductive than the flowers. Why don't we go take a look? Maybe they'll feel your aura and bloom even more fiercely. Shuilan, you've become much smoother recently. Imo glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Shuilan looked at her with a smile, his eyes flashing. No, it's not smooth talking. It's my sincerity to the Devil Master. How about it? Do you want to go? Let's go. Imo was straightforward. She wanted to see how beautiful the flowers that didn't bloom according to the rules were. Shuilan's eyes immediately curved. He bowed and extended his hand towards her. How about letting this little Wang lead the way for Devil Master? He acted like a servant asking the Empress Dowager to rise. Imo burst out laughing. A smile to topple a city, another smile to topple a country. Shuilan looked at her and couldn't help but recite 2 lines of a poem. Imo faintly felt that the 2 lines of the poem were familiar. She asked, "You know how to drop books. Where did you learn them?" "Learned from you." Shuilan subconsciously blurted out these 2 words. Just as he was about to say "learned from you," he suddenly remembered something and changed his words. "It's very normal to learn from you. As for these 2 lines of poetry, I accidentally came across them. Alright, let's go. If we're late, the flower might have wilted." Just as he said this, a commotion suddenly came from the front yard. In the distance, a huge creature swooped down toward Imo Palace. Imo raised his head subconsciously. When he saw the huge creature, his expression changed. The behemoth was the size of a house and looked like a pig without a head. It had 2 pairs of fleshy wings and its entire body was pink. It looked extremely strange. Primordial beast, chaos. At this moment, the guards in Imo Palace were already alarmed. Seeing that primal chaos was charging towards Imo Palace with the force of a thunderbolt, they all flew up to stop it. Some used their magic treasures, some used their spells, and some used their weapons. It smashed towards the primal chaos. Hundun did not slow down at all. There seemed to be a protective shield around its body. All the magic treasures, spells, and weapons bounced off before they could even touch its body. It was extraordinarily powerful. General Manager Himu's expression changed. He was about to mobilize the troops. Imo raised her hand. "Pass down my order. Don't attack. Let it in." She recognized Hundun. She had seen it in Fantian Palace before. However, at that time, it was only a stone statue and had not been activated. Although head steward Himu was worried, he still obeyed her words and sent a signal to her. Only then did the guards open a path for Hundun. Almost in the blink of an eye, Hundun arrived at the back garden. It folded its wings and landed. Imo's heart thumped wildly. He looked up. "Mother." A tender voice sounded from Hundun's back. Following the voice, a boy flew down and pounced directly at Imo. Chapter 1685. Nyenma. Imo immediately hugged him. As soon as the soft little body was in her arms, Imo's heart beat wildly as if it had fallen into a warm pool of water. She was indescribably satisfied. That child was Shin Nyenma. She had not seen him for nearly 3 months and he had grown a lot. He used to look like a 1-year-old, but now he looked like a 3-year-old. His black hair was hanging down and his little lips were red. His eyes were bright and he was in high spirits. Especially his red robe, which was as dazzling as the fire. He looked like a red boy in a painting. Imo could not help but raise her hand to touch his arms and legs. She felt that the little guy had become much stronger. The little guy used to be made of crystal. Although it was beautiful, it was easy to break. Now it seemed to be made of white jade. His skin was delicate, smooth, and strong. "Mother, I missed you so much." Shin Nyenma probably missed her very much. As soon as he was in her arms, he generously kissed Imo on the face. When she hugged the little guy again, all the gloominess in Imo's heart was swept away. She also kissed her son on the face. "Mother missed you too." The mother and son pair were being affectionate, leaving Shuilan hanging to the side. Shuilan looked at the scene in silence. He looked at Shin Nyenma and did not know what to say for a moment. It was the first time he saw Shin Nyenma. The last time they met, this kid was still in the stone. Shin Nyenma looked like his father. He was almost a copy of Shin Jiuli's appearance, but their personalities were poles apart. "Mother, you have become much prettier." Shin Nyenma looked at his mother carefully with his big eyes. It was the first time he saw his mother as a grown-up, but it was not strange because she looked closer to the person that his father had painted. The little guy was very sweet. Imo could not help but rub his head. You have grown a lot too. She then looked at Hun Dun, who had become smaller not far away. You can even control it. Of course, mother. I have all the 8 mythological beasts and they all listen to me. Shin Yinma was proud. Imo's eyes flickered. It had only been 3 months since they last saw each other, but the little fellow's skills had simply increased by leaps and bounds. Just now, when he leaped into the air, it was already a strength that even the experts of the immortal world might not be able to achieve. Shui Yilan, who had been ignored for a long time, finally spoke. Imo, why don't we go out and play together? I'm not going. Imo refused without hesitation. His eyes were still fixed on Shin Yinma's face. Shui Yilan was speechless. He paused for a moment and said, Do you miss Nyenma? We can bring him along. He's a boy and he's been cooped up in Fantian Palace all this time. Now that he's finally out, do you want him to be cooped up in Fantian Palace? It's better for children to go out and see more. Imo immediately asked his son, Nyenma, do you want to go out and play? Shin Yinma looked at her and then looked at Shui Yilan. His eyes flashed. Nyenma wants to go out. However, I only want to go out with my mother. I don't want anyone else. Shui Yilan's lips twitched. He faintly felt that something was wrong. When he was about to speak, Imo had already waved at him. Shui Yilan, go and see the demonic flowers by yourself. He lowered his head and asked his son, Where do you want to go? The mortal world. Shin Yinma answered with 2 words. Good. Then let's go to the mortal world. Shui Yilan was speechless. Devil Lord, can you have some integrity? You can't have a son and everything will be fine. He was about to remind Imo, but unexpectedly, the little boy in her arms glanced at him with his big eyes and asked very innocently, Mother, why is this uncle still here? Chapter 1686. So, Imo also looked at him and asked with some surprise, Do you still have something to do? Haven't you left yet? Shui Yilan. He dryly exhorted, Then you should be careful and have fun. Then he left with a little heart that was almost hurt. His back looked a little bleak. In the boundless mortal world, everyone was busy. The streets were paved with blue stones, rows of buildings, hawkers, and pedestrians hurriedly walked along the street. It was different from the high and mighty celestial world, and also different from the unrestrained prosperity of the Devil Kingdom. This place was more down to earth. Imo and Shin Yinma walked on the street. Everything around them seemed familiar yet strange. Hun Dun had turned into the shape of a little pig and swaggered beside Shin Yinma. From time to time, it attracted the attention of others. In the city where they came from, there were many pet beasts, but most of them were ferocious beasts such as wolves, bears, tigers, and leopards. Each one was more majestic than the other. Only the mother and daughter were accompanied by a miniature version of a little pig. The mother and daughter were very good-looking. With such a little pig beside them, the number of people who turned to look at them was 100%. Many people were stunned by them. Some even began to follow them from afar. Soon people found that the little pig was different. The little pig was more delicate than the ordinary pigs. It had double eyelids, big eyes, and long eyelashes. When it looked at people, it even blinked. This little pig was very arrogant. It raised its head high, and even its little tail, which was supposed to be a question mark, stood up like an antenna. What was more strange was that when the ferocious beasts passed by with their masters saw the pig, their bodies trembled like sifting chaff. They were almost paralyzed on the spot, and their masters could not pull them up. It wasn't until the mother and daughter pair and the piglet had gone far away that those ferocious beasts struggled to get up in fear. However, they no longer dared to walk in the same direction. Almost all of them turned around and ran back. For a moment there was quite a bit of chaos on the street. Shin Yinma certainly knew that it was caused by Hun Dun. He patted the little pig's head and said, Little Zhu, keep a low profile. Hun Dun was crying. It was a dignified mythological beast, but it had turned into a pig. Was it not low-key enough? However, since it was the little master's order, it naturally had to obey unconditionally. Thus, it lowered its tail that was raised high and deliberately coiled it into a question mark. It blinked its eyes and asked, Like this? Shin Yinma nodded. Yes, I feel much better. Imo raised his hand and rubbed his eyebrows. A mythological beast that could turn the world upside down was as obedient as a kitten in front of Shin Yinma. She had already talked to Shin Yinma. She knew that he had been diligently cultivating in the Fantian Palace for the past 3 months. He would wake up in the morning and memorize books for 2 hours. After memorizing the books, he would go to cultivate. In the afternoon or at night, he would wake up a mythological beast. Not only that, he also had to master the key points of raising the mythological beasts and make them truly obey him. Little Nianma had been very busy for the past 3 months. This was because these divine beasts all had their own bad tempers. Some of them were full of childlike innocence, such as this Hun Dun. Some were tall and mighty, such as Jianghu. There were also those who smiled and pretended to be very talented, but were actually full of evil tricks, such as Lao Ai. Little Nianma had to guide them according to their temperament to truly control them. Xinjuli was very strict with him. Every day he personally supervised him to practice. He could not be careless. After all, children were playful. Sometimes, when little Nianma was tired of practicing, he would throw a tantrum and slack off. Chapter 1687. After all, children were playful. Sometimes, when little Nianma was tired of practicing, he would throw a tantrum and slack off. As long as Xinjuli saw it, he would be severely punished. Every punishment was a painful experience for little Nianma. He would remember it for a few days after each punishment. Gradually he did not dare to slack off. Naturally, little Nianma was resentful. He felt that his father was not like his father, but more like a perverted master. He deeply felt that his father was too eager for quick success. It was as if he wanted to squeeze all the knowledge into his little brain in a very short time. It was a typical force-feeding education. Little Nianma was actually very dissatisfied, but he was too weak to fight against his father. Therefore, he could only follow his father's education step by step. Fortunately, although Xinjuli was very strict with his practice, he took good care of him in daily life. He made delicious food for him. Seeing that his father, a divine lord, had to personally make soup for him, little Nianma felt that his father's strictness was actually forgivable. Little Nianma was still a child. When he slept at night, he still wanted to be accompanied by someone just like his mother. However, Xinjuli probably wanted to train his independence, so he gave him a separate hall and let him sleep alone in the hall. At first, little Nianma was not used to it. He often got up in the middle of the night and ran to his father's hall. However, the door of his father's hall was closed, and there was a wizardry barrier on it. Little Nianma used all his strength to open it, but he could not. He was so anxious that he hit and scratched outside and cried. However, it was useless on Xinjuli. He cried until his voice was hoarse, but his father would not open the door for him. He could only sob and go back to his big bed to sleep. Strangely, no matter how hoarse his voice was, it could be recovered the next day. His voice was as clear as a lark. Sometimes, in a daze, he seemed to feel that his father was sitting beside him. One of his hands was rubbing his soft hair as if he was looking at him and protecting him. It made him feel very warm and cozy. He wanted to open his eyes to take a look, but he couldn't, so he fell asleep again. When he woke up, he could not find any trace of his father's presence. Therefore, little Nianma thought that he must be dreaming. It was precisely because of Xinjuli's strict education that little Nianma seemed to have been reborn in the past 3 months. He had become more responsible and cunning. Naturally, little Nianma missed his mother very much. More than once, he talked about it in front of Xinjuli, and Xinjuli promised him that he would be able to look for his mother once he awakened the 8 mythological beasts. This condition was like a cardiac stimulant. Little Nianma practiced diligently as if he had been injected with chicken blood. Xinjuli did not have to worry about him anymore. The 8 mythological beasts required special skills to be awakened. Therefore, when little Nianma was able to awaken all the mythological beasts, his kung fu must have reached a certain level. Ordinary people couldn't even get close to him. Therefore, when little Nianma awakened and tamed the last mythical beast, Xinjuli finally gave him a long vacation. He gave him a month's time to reunite with his mother. This was all little Nianma's experience in the past 3 months. Along the way, little Nianma told Gu Shijio everything that had happened to him. He was so happy that he told her everything that had happened to him. The focus of interest of a little boy was naturally different from that of an adult. Chapter 1688. The little boy's interests were naturally different from the adults. He focused on the exciting experience of taming the mythological beasts. Among the 8 mythological beasts, Xiongqi was the most humane and honest one. Therefore, when Xin Yanma woke it up, it immediately recognized him as its master and did not give him any problems. However, the other mythological beasts were not so obedient. After they were awakened, a few of them were not convinced at all and even gave him problems. Fortunately, Shen Yinma was smart and gradually learned from the experience. Finally, he gradually tamed these mythological beasts and made them his most powerful guards. The little thing was very talkative. He kept talking in front of Imo. Imo held his hand and walked leisurely on the street while listening to him talk. Suddenly she felt that it was very warm. The only person she missed these days was little Nienma. Now he was finally by her side. He was so lively and cute. Logically speaking, she should be very satisfied. However, she did not know why she felt a little lost in her heart, as if something was missing. Mother, father allowed me to stay with you for a month. Little Nienma's eyes were curved. Obviously he was very happy. Imo looked at him and finally could not help but say, "You are so young. How can father allow you to fly across so many levels by yourself? Aren't you afraid of getting lost on the way?" That person was too irresponsible. Her Mo palace was on the 3rd level, but Fantian Palace was on the 36th level. The distance was thousands of mountains and rivers. When she went to Fantian Palace, she could not get there so quickly if she did not use a very special space travel method. The special space travel method required a very strong telekinesis to be realized. It was absolutely impossible to do without the power of level 3 of the heaven level. Although little Nienma was the son of God and was born with amazing telekinesis, he had only reached level 9 of the earth level. Although he was riding on Hun Dun, the power of the mount generally depended on the master's telekinesis. In other words, the level of the master's telekinesis was proportional to the power of the mount. Although Hun Dun was a mythological beast, its current power was only 20% to 30%. After all, it had just been awakened and its blood was not completely flowing. The power of the mythological beast was also greatly reduced. Little Nienmo rode on Hun Dun for a long and bumpy journey to get here. Every level of heaven had some uncertain variables and unseen difficulties. Was it really not dangerous for such a young child to travel alone? Shinjuli was too lax. Amo's heart was filled with dissatisfaction. His tone was filled with anger and condemnation. Little Nienma did not take it to heart. "It's all right, mother. My kung fu is quite good now. The scenery along the way was not bad and we did not encounter any danger. I wanted my father to come along as well so that he could visit my mother. However, he said that this single plank bridge and the broad road were different. He also said that he needed to practice his kung fu, so he asked Nienma to come alone." "Imo," she sneered in her heart. It seemed like that person had remembered the words she said before she left. From the looks of it, he had finally given up and stopped bothering her, and then she could finally be at ease. She did not have to worry that he would use little Nienma as a link to get entangled with her. This man was indeed the Divine Lord. She seemed to be relieved. "Let's go, Nienma. Mother will bring you to a good meal." Chapter 1689. It was a restaurant. It was lunchtime and there were many people in the restaurant. This restaurant was different from what Imo remembered. She remembered that there were private rooms on the 2nd floor of a high-end restaurant. However, when she held Nienma's hand and walked up the stairs, she realized that it was still a hall. There were rows of tables and chairs in the hall. It was not different from the 1st floor and there were still many customers. Imo frowned slightly. She only wanted to be alone with her son now. She raised her hand to call the waiter and asked for a private room. The waiter was confused. "Sir, what is a private room?" Imo's veins on her forehead twitched, and she had to teach him about private rooms. The waiter shook his head like a rattledrum. "Sir, there is no such thing as a private room in the Qinghua Kingdom. We treat all customers equally. It is the same for any restaurant." He then looked at Imo from head to toe. "Sir, you are not from the Qinghua Kingdom, are you?" At this moment, Imo did not want to be too conspicuous, so she used a spell on herself and Nienma to hide their true appearances. Now, what appeared in front of the public was only an ordinary beauty and a beautiful boy. They did not look any different from the ordinary people here. Imo rubbed her eyebrows and waved her hand. "Forget it. Find us a more secluded table." It was easy to find a secluded table because the people of the Qinghua Kingdom liked to show off. They liked to sit in places where there were many people. Therefore, a secluded table would always be the last to be occupied unless there was a special situation. The waiter brought the menu and Imo let little Nienma order. Today the little guy was the apple of her eye. Everything was based on his happiness. Little Nienma did not hesitate and ordered a lot of delicacies. Needless to say, the little guy was very considerate. He ordered a few dishes that Imo liked. Imo realized that little Nienma had become more sensible. When they were about to sit, the little guy not only pulled out a chair for her in advance, but also used a cleaning spell to clean everything before letting his mother sit. When they were eating, he even put the dishes that she liked to eat closer to her. Imo could not help but smile when she saw how busy he was. She raised her hand and patted his head. Nyenma, I should be the one taking care of you now. No, my father taught me that a man is born to take care of a woman, especially the woman closest to him. Therefore I should take care of my mother. The woman closest to me is my mother. The chopsticks in Imo's hand paused. He did not expect the supreme divinity to be such a sentimental person. She looked at the dishes on the table and realized that most of them were her favorites. It seemed that little Nyenma's taste was similar to hers. She tasted a few mouthfuls and felt that although the appearance of the dish was not bad, the taste did not seem right. Little Nyenma frowned after a few mouthfuls of food. The food here is far from what my father used to cook. Every time he tasted something he would comment on it. For example, this one was too salty, that one was too bland, and this one had too much seasoning. Imo looked at the dishes that little Nyenma had tasted. They were all her favorite dishes. Looking at little Nyenma's situation, it seemed that when he was in the Fantion Palace, Shinjuli often cooked these dishes for him. She was absent-minded and recalled the days when Shinjuli first came to the Imo Palace. In addition to sending her flowers, he also showed off his cooking skills several times and made several kinds of delicacies for her. Chapter 1690. She tried her best to embarrass him and drive him away. Not only did she throw away the flowers that he gave her, but she also threw away the dishes that he cooked. She did not even try them. Later he probably knew that it was useless to cook for her, so he did not cook for her anymore. Judging from little Nyenma's reaction, the dishes that Shinjuli cooked were quite delicious. Could it be better than the chefs in Imo Palace? Of course, this thought only flashed through Imo's mind and she did not take it to heart. Since she did not like it, she would just eat less. By the way, mother, you are very familiar with the layout of the restaurant. Have you been here before? Imo was slightly stunned. Ever since she came to this continent, she had never been to the human world. However, she seemed to be born with some of the rules and layout of the human world. Needless to say, it was related to her reincarnation. After all, when she was reincarnated as Ning Shuema, she was 100% human. She had sealed that part of her memory, but she did not expect that some of the habits in her bones had not been completely forgotten. Hence, it became an instinct. She smiled and did not answer her son. Instead, she peeled an egg for him to stop him from continuing to ask. Luer, I heard that Mount Jiai in the south of the city has been smoking recently. The smoke is very strange. Is it purple? Yes, it is indeed smoking. The smoke is coming out in a circle. The shape is quite beautiful. Why do you think it is smoking? How would I know? I only saw it from afar. There were two new guests sitting at the table next to them. They were talking about the latest gossip. The smoking mountain. Could it be that the volcano was about to erupt? This was the first thought that came to Imo's mind. She was also a little puzzled. Had the people here not heard of active volcanoes? She did not know how far Mount Jiai was from the city. If it was very close, she was afraid that the people in the city would be affected. Uncles, is Mount Jiai far from here? Little Nyenma, who was sitting next to them, asked. It is not far. It is only about 40 to 50 miles away. One of them answered. Little guy, the mountain is a bit dangerous. It is not a place where people can go. The other person also spoke, but he suddenly stopped. Where did they go? The mother and daughter at the table had disappeared, leaving only a silver ingot on the table as payment for the meal. Mount Jiai wasn't very tall. It was only about 300 to 400 zhang tall. However, the mountain range was vast and winding with no end in sight. The main peak was shaped like Mount Fuji. It was conical and looked like a typical volcano. This volcano probably hadn't erupted for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. The surrounding vegetation was abnormally lush. There were many trees on the mountain, and some of them were even ancient living fossils. For example, some of them were extremely thick and old. Even if a dozen people held hands, they might not be able to encircle all of them. The people in this country were probably very lazy, or perhaps they had a strong environmental awareness. Basically, no one touched the vegetation in the mountains. They were all growing in their original state. Deep in the mountains and dense forests, there were bound to be all kinds of animals, and this place was no exception. From time to time, the figures of animals would flash by in the forest. Imo and Shin Yinmo rode on Hun Dun's back and hovered in the air. They looked down at the mountain below. Indeed, there were plumes of purple smoke rising from the mountaintop, just as that person had described. Every wisp of purple smoke rose in a spiral, thin at the bottom and thick at the top. From afar it looked like a purple mushroom cloud. Plumes of smoke rose from the 8 directions of the mountain, looking like erected totem poles. Chapter 1691. It did not look like a volcano was about to erupt. The smoke did not look like it either. Imo frowned and stared at the purple smoke. She had a very strong sixth sense. At this moment, when she saw the smoke column, she faintly felt that something was not right. Shen Yinma also pursed his lips. It is not a volcano eruption. I thought I could take the opportunity to practice the fire spell here. The magma during the volcanic eruption contained a very high amount of energy. If he used this energy to practice, he could achieve twice the result with half the effort. His father had told him about some of the symptoms before the volcanic eruption, but it was completely different from what he saw. However, what was this purple smoke? It looked very strange. Shen Yinma was at the age where he was not afraid of tigers. He was very curious by nature. He pulled Amo's sleeve. "Mother, shall we go down and take a look?" Amo looked at the purple smoke. It was so bright, but it gave a very gloomy feeling. It was as if something terrible was hidden in it. However, she looked at the smoke for a long time. Her eyes were like X-rays as she looked at the smoke back and forth several times. She did not find anything hidden in it. It was just pure smoke. After the smoke rose into the sky, it slowly spread around and covered a small part of the forest. She took a closer look at the forest again. The forest was still lush with leaves, and the animals didn't run out in a panic either. It seemed that the smoke was just an ordinary cloud. There was nothing wrong with it. No matter what era it was, animals living in the forest were the most sensitive. They could always accurately detect danger in time and quickly respond before the danger came. Now that the animals did not show any signs of anxiety, did it mean that the purple smoke was actually not dangerous? "Mother?" Shen Yinma tugged at her sleeve. "Okay, let's go down. However, when we go down, you have to listen to everything I say. Don't run around and don't make your own decisions." Amo's voice was unprecedentedly strict. "Okay. I won't run around," Shen Yinma promised. Imo waved her hand and let Shen Yinma command Hun Dun to fly down. Although Imo was straightforward, she was still very cautious when the enemy situation was unknown. She and Shen Yinma did not directly rush into the purple smoke. Instead, they landed on the periphery of the forest that was shrouded in purple smoke. After landing, he realized that the trees here were extremely tall and there were thorns and vines between the trees. There were no traces of human activity at all. The weeds were about 5 feet tall. Shen Yinma was buried in the weeds as soon as he landed. Not even his shadow could be found. "Mother, what are we doing here?" Little Yinma pushed the weeds in front of him away and looked at the forest with difficulty. "Observe." Imo answered him with 2 words. She pondered for a moment and added, "Nyinma, don't be reckless no matter what. You have to observe the situation first before you decide what to do. Don't just rush in and do it recklessly. This way you won't be at a disadvantage and take the wrong path." She took the opportunity to educate him. "Yes." Shen Yinma nodded and looked at his mother with his big eyes. "Mother, you know so much." Imo rubbed his head again, but a strange look flashed through his eyes. This knowledge was obviously not summed up when she was a devil lord. It was as if it came from her bones. Once she encountered a situation, she would naturally have this kind of reaction. Imo grabbed his hand. "I'll take you in." Chapter 1692. Both mother and daughter stepped on the dead branches and leaves as they moved forward. Both of them were highly skilled in kung fu. Although there were many thorns in the forest, it was not a problem for them. They were basically gliding on the grass. Imo obviously had a lot of experience in surviving in the wild. Whether it was the way to pick the thorns or the way to move forward, she was very professional. She did not even use any psychokinesis. She only relied on her qing gong to get rid of all the obstacles easily. Her every move was clean and neat. Shen Yinma's eyes were shining with excitement. He liked his mother like this. In the past, his mother always had a gloomy aura which was a little scary. Now, the gloomy aura seemed to be gradually disappearing. His mother now looked more like the mother in his father's painting. His mother used to be indifferent to everything, but now she began to care about the people. More than once, he had heard from his father about some of the things his mother had done. He knew that she used to be cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She was willing to sacrifice herself for her friends. Although she used to be a good-for-nothing, she worked hard to improve herself. She didn't shrink back in the face of any difficulties. To be honest, he liked his mother, who was full of vitality and a sense of justice. Now, his mother seemed to have finally begun to return. When his mother heard the conversation between the two people, she thought that a volcano was about to erupt. Therefore, she did not even think about it and brought him along to see what was going on. While little Nianma was lost in his thoughts, his mother suddenly pulled him to hide behind a tree. There was a noise in the depths of the forest. First, a deer rushed out, and then a bear was chasing after it. It was a very ordinary scene of wild animals hunting for food. There was nothing special about it. Little Nianma yawned and looked at his mother, only to find that Imo was staring at the two beasts. She frowned slightly and seemed to have found something wrong. Therefore, little Nianma turned around to take a look again. His eyes widened with interest. At a time of life and death, even a rabbit would bite, let alone a deer. The deer was probably anxious because it turned around and hit the bear like a small cannonball. The deer and the bear were fighting there. Look at their eyes. Amo's voice came into little Nianma's ears. Sure enough, little Nianma looked at the eyes of the two beasts. They all had purple eyes. That purple color looked dazzling, but it was filled with an aura of death. The white of the eyes and the eyeballs could not be seen. They had completely merged into one. What happened next was even stranger. The bear was strong and had sharp teeth. No matter how hard the deer tried, it was no match for it. Soon its neck was bitten off. Logically speaking, at this point, the deer should be dead, but unexpectedly, it was still kicking its four hooves. Its severed head was even trying to jump up and bite the bear's ear. It was too strange. Little Nianma widened his eyes in surprise. The beast in the human world was too strong. Beside him, Imo had a thought and pinched his fingers. A tree branch shot out and pierced through the bear's head. The bear howled in pain. Even though its head was pierced, it did not die. Instead, it charged towards the back of the tree. Hun Dun, who had been hiding beside little Nianma, rushed forward excitedly and was about to reveal its true form. Little Nianma grabbed its tail. Don't eat it. This bear is weird. Imo patted little Nianma's head to show his appreciation. Then he threw out countless branches. Chapter 1693. The great devil's hidden weapon was not something that the bear could avoid. In the blink of an eye, the bear was pierced like a hedgehog. All the major acupuncture points on its body were full of branches. If it were an ordinary bear, it would have died long ago. However, the bear was very strong and did not want to fall. Like an oversized green hedgehog, it rushed to Imo and opened its mouth to bite her. The deer's head was still hanging on its ear, and the deer's mouth was still biting it. Imo swung her sword, and the bear's head flew away. The bear was the same as the deer. Its head was separated from its body, but it still stared at its enemy. The bear's head jumped on the ground a few times and it still wanted to bite Imo. Imo frowned. Rest. She raised her hand and a red light was emitted. The bear and the deer disappeared. Mother, what is going on? Little Nianma was frightened. He was not afraid of the bear, but he was frightened by its desperate spirit. This purple smoke is strange. Imo raised her hand and covered her son and the chaos with a wizardry barrier. Follow me closely. I will check again. Imo was naturally fast. She quickly checked the inside and outside of the jungle with her son and found a very serious problem. In the places where the purple smoke covered, the animals had mutated. They had purple eyes, were fierce, and were bloodthirsty. Even if they were beheaded, they would still stare at their enemy. In the places where the purple smoke did not cover, the animals were normal and there was nothing wrong with them. After careful observation, she found that even the plants in the places where the purple smoke covered had mutated. Strands of purple were extending down from the top of the canopy. The trees were also much taller than the trees in other places. It seemed that their growth rate had increased. If animals and plants were like this, what about people? Just as Imo was thinking about this, she saw two people running out from the depths of the jungle. Both of them were dressed as Taoist priests. It seemed that they had heard the news about the purple smoke and came to check it out. One of them was obviously affected by the purple smoke. His eyes were dark purple and the eyeballs were not visible. The way he ran was like a zombie. He jumped a few feet and he was chasing the other one. The other one, on the other hand, was quite normal. He was being chased around like a pig and a wolf, and he was on the verge of tears. Senior brother, wake up, don't chase me. The purple-eyed man's martial arts were obviously very high. He stretched out his mutated hand and finally grabbed the crying man. He pulled him into his embrace and opened his mouth to bite him. Whoosh! A white light shot out, shooting at the crazy purple-eyed man. He was pushed back a few steps. Suddenly he raised his eyes and looked at Shin Yinma, who had just released the white light. Shin Yinma could not help but feel a chill down his spine. The purple-eyed man let go of his junior brother and rushed toward little Nyenma. Little Nyenma was not really afraid. His little hand emitted a white light and flew toward the purple-eyed man. This was not a killing move, but a move that his father had taught him to expel evil energy. Although the power of his technique was not as great as that of Shinjioli's, the power of this technique was not small. His father said that even if someone was poisoned by the zombie poison, this method could be used to expel it, and it worked every time. However, this time he had already shot 6 or 7 times, but the man's eyes were still purple. He was almost caught by him. Imo raised her hand and a red light wrapped around the man. In an instant it was as if he was shackled. The man was tightly bound by the red light and could no longer move. Chapter 1694. Imo raised her hand, and a ray of red light wrapped around the man. In an instant the man was shackled by the red light and could no longer move. Imo raised her hand and rubbed Shin Yinma's head. Good boy. Try it on him slowly. Therefore Shin Yinma happily tried all kinds of detoxification methods on the man. That junior brother breathed a sigh of relief and cupped his hands towards Imo. Thank you for your help, Mississippi. Please do save my senior brother. He is a good person who has always taken it upon himself to subdue demons and devils. Imo interrupted him. What is going on? How did he get poisoned? The junior told her what happened. They were from a cultivation sect and were passing by this place. When they saw the strange purple smoke, they flew over with their swords to see what kind of demon was behind it. They were also afraid of being poisoned, so they used an anti-poison spell before entering the forest. However, it did not work. Not long after they entered the forest, the senior who had been walking in front suddenly stopped. He patted his senior's shoulder in surprise and wanted to ask him what was going on. He did not expect his senior to become like this and chase after him with a pair of purple eyes. The junior briefly told the story and continued to beg Imo. In order to impress her, he kept talking about his senior's past deeds of killing demons. In Imo's ears, she felt that this senior was like a reincarnated Fahai. Whenever he saw a demon, it was as if he saw a mortal enemy. Whether it was evil or not, he would kill it. The junior kept talking, but Imo's pretty face was getting colder and colder. That junior brother seemed to have sensed something amiss as he spoke and finally shut his mouth. Imo slowly dusted her sleeves. Do you know who I am? You are. The junior had a bad feeling in his heart. Devil Master, Imo chuckled. This senior brother of yours has killed quite a few of my people. The man's face changed drastically and took a few steps back. You, Imo looked at him gently. Tell me, how many have you killed? As many as your senior? No. The man was obviously a little flustered. Imo smiled gently again. You're not allowed to lie. If you do, I'll punish you even more harshly. The man's face turned green and white for a while. Suddenly he puffed out his chest and said, I admit that I've killed 3 evildoers. It's not that I'm not capable enough. It's just that I'm too soft-hearted. I can't bear to kill anyone who isn't evil. Senior Marshal brother often says that I'm too soft-hearted. Imo sized him up. This person was indeed soft-hearted. His senior brother had almost bitten him to death, but he couldn't bear to slap him. That junior Marshal brother looked as if he was going to throw caution to the wind. Did you release this strange purple smoke? Do you want to turn the human world into a purgatory? This person's imagination was really rich. Was he brainwashed by his senior brother? He drew his sword and pointed it at Imo. Today, even if I die, I will. Before he could finish speaking, he felt a sudden heat in his hand. The sword had actually melted in an instant. If he hadn't pulled back in time, he probably wouldn't have been able to keep one of his hands. Imo's voice was indifferent. You're not even qualified to fight me. You can scram now. There's a city 60 miles ahead. Tell the magistrate there to quickly evacuate the people. The man was stunned. He didn't expect that she would let him go so easily. Moreover, from her words, it was obvious that she wasn't the one who released the purple smoke. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Then what about my senior marshal brother? Imo asked him back, is your senior marshal brother more important or the safety of the people in the city more important? Chapter 1695. Imo asked him back, is your senior brother more important than the safety of the people in the city? That one sentence caused that person's face to turn green and white. Gritting his teeth, he steeled his heart and rode his sword away. On the other side, Shen Yinma had already tried more than a dozen methods on his senior, but none of them worked. Mother, is it because I am not good enough? After all, it was Shen Yinma's first time, so he could not figure out his own strength. Imo looked at the few methods that Shen Yinma used to exorcise evil spirits and realized that she could do it too. Therefore she also cast a spell, and a ball of blazing white light directly shrouded the man. Shen Yinma exclaimed happily, "Mother, you can do it too." The white light that she emitted was certainly different from Shen Yinma's. It was extremely powerful, almost as powerful as Shen Jiuli's. Shen Yinma was very satisfied and waited for the man to recover. He did not expect that after the white light disappeared, the man was still the same. His strength had increased a lot. He struggled to break the red light that trapped him and repeatedly showed his newly grown fangs to Shen Yinma. He is hopeless. Imo did not want to waste any more energy on the man. She directly cast a red light, and the man immediately turned into dust and disappeared. Shen Yinma frowned. Mother, it seems that he is hopeless after being poisoned by this poisonous smoke. What should we do? If the smoke continues to spread, I don't know how many creatures will be affected. Imo also rubbed her eyebrows. It was like a bird flu virus. Animals and humans could not survive if they inhaled it. She was afraid that other species would not be able to survive if they encountered it. The reason why she spent so much energy on the senior brother was to experiment on him to see if there was a way to save him. Now it seemed that there was no way. She took out her directed audio spell and contacted Shui Yilan. Without waiting for him to greet her, she directly briefed him about the situation and asked him to quickly order the nearby demons to move away. Shui Yilan was worried about her safety. Momo, don't act rashly. I will be there soon. There's no need for that. Just give the order. Imo didn't wait for Shui Yilan to speak any more nonsense and turned off the voice transmission talisman. Let's go to the place where the smoke is coming from. He flew out of the forest and headed straight for the top of the mountain. She also knew that the purple smoke was extremely dangerous, so she did not want the child to be in danger. Therefore she asked Chaos to stop Shen Yinma in the air and told him not to be attacked by the purple smoke. He should not run around and stay within her sight. Shen Yinma also knew that he should not cause any more trouble for his mother, so he nodded in agreement. Mother, be careful. I will. I'll be right back. Imo swooped down. She planned to take a look first before making a decision. She dared to set up a protective shield around her body. Then she ran towards the place where the purple smoke was coming from. Her body disappeared into the purple smoke. Shen Yinma only hated that he was still too inexperienced and too weak. He could not fight side by side with his mother. Now he could only watch helplessly. Chaos was very protective of its little master. It had been carrying its little master in circles in the air. It could not leave the place, but it could not be attacked by the purple smoke. 10 minutes passed, a quarter of an hour passed, an hour passed, 2 hours passed. Time passed by as Shen Yinma waited anxiously. Chapter 1696. The purple smoke was getting bigger and bigger. A few clouds of purple smoke had joined together and almost covered half of the mountain. The circle of chaos was getting bigger and bigger. Shen Yinma's eyes were fixed on the place where his mother had jumped into. His heart was burning with anxiety. His mother said that she would be back soon. Why did she not come back after so long? At first, he was afraid that he would disturb his mother, so he pursed his lips and restrained himself from calling out to her. Half an hour later, he couldn't hold it in any longer and began to probe. Mother, what's going on inside? His current skill was already very good, and his voice could be heard by the entire mountain. He believed that his mother could hear him even more. There was no response. There was no response from below. In the end, Shen Yinma could not hold it in any longer. He kept calling out to his mother until his voice was hoarse, but his mother did not respond. It was as if she had been swallowed by the purple smoke and would never come back. It had been an hour. Shen Yinma could not wait any longer. He was so impulsive that he wanted to rush down to take a look. Fortunately, chaos was still rational. It held his body that had just jumped down and gave him a suggestion in a muffled voice. Your mother is the devil master. We don't know if she is dead or alive after she goes down. Your current power is not even 1,000th of your mother's. Jumping down is a waste of your life. If your mother escapes and can't find you, she will be even more anxious. What should I do? Shen Yinma's voice was trembling. His excessive anxiety made his mind blank. Calm down. Chaos only said these 4 words. Shen Yinma's heart trembled. This was also what his father often taught him. He told him that no matter what happened, the first thing to do was to be calm. Only then could he make the most accurate judgment and come up with the most perfect response. Shen Yinma took a deep breath and took out a golden directed audio spell from his sleeve. This was given to him by Shinjuli before Shen Yinma came. He told him not to use it unless there was something very special. His father seemed to have really given up on his mother. In the past 3 months he rarely mentioned her. Even if he did, it was just a passing remark. Shen Yinma did not want his father to give up on his mother. Sometimes he would deliberately mention his mother in front of his father. However, Shinjuli always avoided the topic with a few words. Shen Yinma thought that his father would never let him see his mother again. After being listless for a few days, Shen Yinma finally regained his energy when his father promised him to look for his mother as soon as the mythological beast was awakened. Before he came, Shinjuli had told him personally that he was going to cultivate in seclusion, and that he should not disturb him unless there was something urgent. As for the little things that happened between Shen Yinma and his mother, there was no need to tell him. Shen Yinma also knew that it was a taboo to be disturbed during a closed-door practice. Otherwise it would be easy to go crazy. Especially recently, his father did not look too good. He really needed to meditate to recover. Father had said that this voice transmission talisman could only be used once. Therefore, Shen Yinma did not dare to answer this special directed audio spell. However, now that his mother had such an accident, he could only ask for help from his father. Blood dripped from his fingertips. He used a special method to activate the directed audio spell. The spell flashed, but it was not connected. Shen Yinma's heart almost jumped out of his throat. Did something happen to his father? Or was he at a critical moment in his cultivation and could not answer? Chapter 1697. Father, please pick me up. For Shen Yinma, 1 second felt as long as a century. Fortunately, after half a minute, the directed audio spell finally turned completely golden, and his father's voice was heard. Yinma, what's the matter? His voice was slightly hoarse, but it was still clear. Shen Yinma almost cried out loud. He tried his best to calm himself down. Father, mother and I came to the human world to play. We saw a strange purple smoke in Jianghu mountain in the Qinghua kingdom. Although Shen Yinma's voice was slightly trembling, his expression was very clear. He had the time, place and incident. In the end, his voice finally sounded like he was about to cry. Father, can you come and save my mother? I'm really worried. I want to go down and have a look. Your mother's life is not in danger. Stay there and don't act rashly. I will be there soon. Shinjuli's voice was clear and low, as if to reassure Shen Yinma. The golden directed audio spell was extinguished. It burned in Shen Yinma's hand and turned into ashes. His mother's life was not in danger? Shen Yinma caught this sentence in time and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then he was a little puzzled. His father had not seen the actual situation here. How did he know that his mother's life was not in danger? Was it a prediction? Another hour passed. In this hour, Shen Yinma did not stop calling. Of course, he did not get any response. If it were not for his father's words, he was afraid that he would have rushed down regardless of the consequences. While he was riding on chaos, a white light flashed in the distance, and a person appeared in front of him. Shen Yinma was stunned. He looked at the person who came and almost could not believe his eyes. Father. It was such a long distance, but his father came so quickly. When he and his mother came here, his mother used the Devil Kingdom's flying spell and flew for nearly 6 hours. He thought that even if his father was faster, it would take at least 4 hours. He did not expect that he would arrive in just over an hour. The person who came was Shinjuli. This time his attire was a little strange. He wore a wide light blue robe with faint silver patterns flowing on it. Perhaps he was in a hurry, so his face was a little pale. However, his eyes were still deep and his voice was still cold. The first sentence he said was, Yinma, your vacation is cancelled. You should go back now. Shen Yinma was stunned. Father. He paused for a moment and finally said what he wanted to say. Father, it is okay to cancel Yinma's leave, but Yinma wants to follow you to save mother. He was worried sick. He had to see with his own eyes that his mother was safe and sound. Shinjuli glanced at him and said, I'll give you 2 choices. 1. Go back now. Father promises to give you a mother in one piece. Secondly, Father will personally escort you back. Father will no longer care about this place. You can choose now. Shen Yinma's eyes widened. He did not expect his father to be so heartless. He burst into tears. Father, haven't you always liked Mother? How can you threaten Yanma with her safety? Shinjuli said coldly, Father is tired. Since we have gone our separate ways, there is no need to worry about her. This time I am here mainly for you. Even if I go down to save her, it is also for you. Can Yanma wait here? As long as Father rescues Mother, I will leave immediately. Chapter 1698. Then, can Yanma stay here and wait? As long as Father rescues Mother, I will leave immediately. I will not delay. Yanma will stay here obediently and will not cause any trouble for Father. Shin Yanma still wanted to argue. Shinjuli looked at the distance, which was almost covered by the purple smoke. Shin Yanma, are you sure you want to bargain with Father here? Father does not care. Anyway, the person who is trapped is not important to Father. It is not a big deal to let her suffer a little more. Shin Yanma was speechless. At this time he had to choose to leave even if he was unwilling. Han Dun carried Shin Yanma and flew away. In the blink of an eye they disappeared into the sky. Shinjuli looked at his son's back. There was a flash of sadness in his eyes. Shin Yanma was still young. There was no use for him to stay here. He would only distract his parents. At this time he did not have the energy to be distracted anymore. He had brought all the 8 mythological beasts out, but they were not as fast as him. They were still on their way. They would meet Yanma and escort him back to Fantian Palace. He turned around and looked at the purple smoke pillar that Imo had jumped down from. Just as he was about to jump down, he suddenly seemed to have sensed something. He slowly turned around and looked at the purple smoke ball that had closed up not far away. His gaze focused on the figure that was faintly discernible in the purple smoke ball. After a slight pause, he finally said, So you've already come out by yourself. The figure shuttled out of the purple smoke. Her red clothes were dancing under the sunset. It was Imo who was trapped in the purple smoke. Her eyes were as bright as rubies. She looked at Shinjuli from head to toe and looked indifferent. Yes, I just came out not long ago. Shinjuli looked at her. He had not seen her for 3 months since they parted at Fantian Palace. At this moment she had the appearance of a young girl. She had big round eyes and a half-smile. She was very similar to the appearance of Ning Shuema in his memory. She had been trapped in the purple smoke for so long, but he did not see any injuries on her body. Her face was slightly pale, but there was nothing wrong with her. She was actually able to escape from the 8-directional violet fiend formation by herself. It seemed like her kung fu had improved enough. The two of them stood facing each other. Their once loving and undying feelings seemed to have vanished into thin air. She looked at him like she was looking at a stranger. Shinjuli turned his eyes away and looked at the purple smoke. It is good that you are fine. Yanma is very worried about you. You can use your directed audio spell to tell him that you are safe. Imo smirked. You don't have to tell me that. She took out her directed audio spell and connected to Shin Yanma. Shin Yanma could not believe his ears when he heard Imo's voice. Mother, is it really you? It's the real deal. Imo comforted him. You can rest assured now. Go back to your Fantian Palace first. Mother will take you out when things are done here. Shin Yanma happily agreed, but the happiness came too quickly. He still could not believe it. Oh, did my father deliberately change my mother's voice to fool me? Imo faintly glanced at Shinjuli, who was not far away, and answered her son, Of course not. Stupid son, didn't you realize that the directed audio spell that called you is only used between mother and son? Shin Yanma seemed to have finally realized it and let go of his doubts. Chapter 1699. He was still puzzled. Mother, why were you gone for so long? You said that you would be back soon. Well, there is an array there and it is not easy to break. I'm actually very anxious. Well, I still have something to do. You can go back first. After the directed audio spell ended, Shin Yanma finally went back with satisfaction. Imo put away the directed audio spell. When she looked up, her eyes met with Shinjuli's. Both of them looked at each other in the air. Imo's eyes were cold. Shinjuli looked away. His voice was also cold. This is the purple evil array. Once it is activated, all 6 realms will be in trouble. It will become a real hell. This array has been activated once 50,000 years ago, and all 6 realms were poisoned. This time, if we want to seal it again, we must work together with the immortals and devils. I have already informed the Emperor Immortal and Ming Di. They should be here soon. Devil Master, please inform the Monster Kingdom. Momo? A voice came from afar and interrupted Shinjiuli's words. Then, a red light came from afar and arrived in front of them in the blink of an eye. This person was Shui Yilan. He did not even look at Shinjiuli, who was standing aside. His eyes fell directly on Imo, and then he heaved a sigh of relief. Momo, fortunately you are fine. He looked again at Imo's face and frowned slightly. Momo, you don't look very good. Are you hurt? His concern was obvious. I am fine. This thing can't trap me. Imo came closer to Shui Yilan. Shui Yilan, you are here at the right time. Shui Yilan's eyes were slightly brightened. This time he faintly felt that Imo seemed to treat him differently. He glanced at Shinjiuli, who was not far away. Shinjiuli did not look at him at all. He seemed to be engrossed in the purple smoke below. Did you miss me? Shui Yilan was half joking and half serious. He tentatively stretched out his arm and gently hugged her waist. Imo didn't hide. Instead, she leaned her head on his shoulder. There's probably going to be a tough battle later. Let me lean on you first. Shui Yilan's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't believe his good luck. He hugged her even tighter. It's okay. You should rest first. He simply sat down on the cloud and let her lean in his arms. Imo seemed to be really tired. She yawned. Shui Yilan, did you bring anything to eat? Shui Yilan was stunned. What do you want to eat? I'll get it for you. Imo pursed her lips in dissatisfaction. When you were by my side, you always carried my favorite food with you. Shui Yilan's heart trembled as he looked down at her. Momo, you remember our past? She recovered her memories. Imo didn't answer him. She only closed her eyes and muttered, so hungry. Shui Yilan was really conflicted. When she was still Shui Imo, the two of them depended on each other for survival. He spoiled her and knew that she liked to eat, so he always brought all kinds of food with him. He even learned how to cook, so he fed her until she was full at any time. After his rebirth, although the two of them had met a few times, Imo had always been cold to him. She had never asked for anything from him. So he had changed his habit of carrying food with him. Right now, let alone good food, he couldn't even find a piece of steamed bun. He really wanted to find food for her, but he couldn't bear to give up this opportunity to hug a beauty. God knows how long he had been waiting for this opportunity. Chapter 1700. Just as he was feeling conflicted, a hand suddenly reached over. In the palm was a plate of exquisite pastries. Looking up the light blue sleeve, he saw Shinjiuli's expressionless face. Eat this. It'll replenish your strength. Imo looked up at him and pushed his hand away. She yawned lazily. I don't want to eat your food. She then turned to Shui Yilan. I remember that you're good at roasting game? Shui Yilan looked down at the forest below and his eyes lit up. Okay, I'll take you down there to roast game. He half-hugged Imo's waist and rushed down to a place not covered by the purple smoke. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the dense forest. Shinjiuli slowly retracted his hand. The pastry in his palm was still steaming, and the sweet aroma lingered in the air. It was the most successful pastry he had ever made, and no one would want to eat it anymore. This was good. He slowly raised his hand, and the pastry in his palm turned into powder. When the wind blew, the powder disappeared without a trace. He slowly sat on the cloud and lowered his eyes to meditate. A bonfire. A pheasant was about to be roasted over the bonfire. The golden skin was covered in oil, and the aroma assailed his nostrils. Shui Yilan looked at Imo, who was sleeping next to him, and then looked up at the sky in the distance. Shinjiuli saw him and Imo being so intimate, but he didn't react or chase after them. Did he really give up and let go? After the pheasant was roasted, he spun it around in his hand. The piping hot pheasant was already at the right temperature. He gently patted Imo awake and handed the pheasant to her. Imo's eyes lit up as she took it. It seemed that she was really hungry. Like a hurricane, the pheasant was reduced to a pile of bones in a moment. Shui Yilan's lips twitched. His Momo's appetite had grown. At this time, the sky was completely dark. Under the light of the bonfire, Imo's eyes were shining. After finishing the pheasant, she still wanted more. Shui Yilan, roast more. Momo, are you still hungry? Imo shook his head. So. In fact, she felt a little bloated. However, there was a space in her chest that she always felt a little empty. No matter how much she stuffed, it would not be able to fill it. Thus, Shui Yilan began to roast things again. Hunting was very easy for him now. He didn't need to get up. All he had to do was blow a whistle, and all kinds of small animals would automatically come to him. Shui Yilan casually picked out a few small and plump breeds with fresh meat. He butchered them and roasted them one by one. He intended to show off his ability in front of her, and naturally did his best to do it in the most beautiful way possible. Momo, what is this purple smoke? Imo was gnawing on a rabbit leg. She looked up at the sky and shook her head. I've never seen it before, but that supreme divinity should know. He should be able to explain it to everyone when they're all here. Shui Yilan's eyes moved slightly. He was not very interested in the purple smoke, but he was interested in what Imo had just said. These days, when Imo occasionally mentioned Shinjuli to him, she would call him by his name and talk about how good Shinjuli was. This time, however, she directly called him by his identity. The sense of unfamiliarity was obvious in her words. What happened between her and Shinjuli? How did they come to this point? Shui Yilan did not dare to ask directly for fear of offending her. He chose the safest question. Momo, are the three of you traveling together? By the way, where is little Nianma? Chapter 1701. Imo was already gnawing on the second rabbit leg. Without looking up, she said, Nianma and I are here to play. We accidentally found something wrong here, so we came here. This place is too dangerous, so little Nianma went back to Fantian Palace. As for the Divine Lord, he is here to find his son and solve the problem here. Shui Yilan's heart skipped a beat. He blurted out, Momo, have you recovered some of your memory? Just as he said this, he suddenly saw auspicious chi rising in the sky. 10,000 rays of multicolored light shone, and several figures appeared. Imo clapped her hands and stood up. She did not answer his question. Instead, she smiled lazily. All right, almost everyone is here. It's time for the meeting. It was a rare gathering of the elites of the six realms. The Celestial Emperor, Ming Di, the Demon King, the Divine Lord, the Great Devil, the four great guardians of the Devil Clan, the four heavenly kings of the Celestial Kingdom, and Yi Tianli were all there. The mortal world had also sent their most powerful national master. Hundreds of people gathered in the sky. It was quite a spectacular sight. Shinjuli and Imo had the highest status. Naturally, they stood at the top. The Celestial Emperor, Shui Yilan, and the other emperors stood on both sides. The Celestial Kingdom, the underworld. The Devil Kingdom, the Monster Kingdom. Unknowingly, there was a clear divide. Most of these people did not know what was going on. They were also confused about the purple smoke. After all, the Celestial Emperor had lived on the mainland for a long time. He could find more information. He had seen a little bit of the description and power of the purple smoke in some of the scrolls, but it was not complete. Fortunately, Imo had just come out from the purple smoke. She knew a little about it. She immediately told them about some of the dangers of the purple smoke. Of course, she also told them about the structure she saw when she went down. She said that there was an unprecedented array below. This array should be the evil sealing array. The purple smoke that could drive all the people in the six realms crazy was sealed at the bottom. This time there must be a flaw in the array. That was why the purple smoke leaked out. As for the origin of this purple smoke, Imo glanced at the silent Shinjuli beside him. The supreme divinity should know something about it. Therefore, everyone looked at Shinjuli. As for the explanation of the purple smoke, Shinjuli only briefly explained, this purple smoke is called the purple evil of 8 directions. It is the most evil thing in the world. 50,000 years ago, this purple smoke once destroyed all the living beings in the 6 realms. These words caused everyone's expression to change greatly. The Heaven Sovereign seemed to have a sudden realization. Among the living beings of the 6 realms, no matter if they were immortals, devils, or beasts, almost none of them were older than 50,000 years old. Even the information from 50,000 years ago had been completely destroyed, with only a few fragments occasionally appearing in the world. No matter if it was an immortal or a devil, once they cultivated to the peak, they were basically immortal. Unless there was an extremely special reason that would take their lives. That was what the Immortal Devil Will Remnant scroll said about what happened 50,000 years ago. The celestial race and the devil race fought each other, and the great calamity of the 6 realms arrived. The celestial race and the devil race both immortalized, and heaven and earth entered the cycle of reincarnation. 10,000 years later, the 6 realms were reborn. To put it simply, the Great War of Celestial Race 50,000 years ago plunged the 6 realms into chaos. All the living beings in the 6 realms perished because of the calamity. The Supreme Divinity and the Devil Lord immortalized and disappeared without a trace. All the living beings in the Celestial Race and the Devil Continent were reshuffled. 10,000 years later, the six realms were formed again. Of course, because all the information from 50,000 years ago had disappeared, the immortal devil remnant scroll had no idea who had written it. Its authenticity and accuracy could not be verified. Chapter 1702. The Celestial Emperor had always thought it was a battle between gods and demons that led to the end of the world. Now that he heard the Supreme Divinity's words, he realized he had been mistaken all along? Did that mean the Supreme Divinity had recovered his memories from 50,000 years ago? Otherwise he wouldn't have said that. The Celestial Emperor recalled the ancient formation Imo had mentioned that sealed the evil purple smoke. He couldn't help but ask, Supreme Divinity who set up that ancient formation? Shenjuli's eyes were indifferent. I, the Devil Lord, and other ancient immortals and demons worked together to set it up. Everyone looked at each other, and then at the Supreme Divinity and Devil Lord who were standing above them. Their eyes were filled with surprise. Didn't they say that gods and demons were at odds with each other 50,000 years ago, so they fought an ancient war? So there was a time when they worked together? The immortals were especially shocked. In their hearts, demons were evil and the Devil Lord was the ancestor of evil. Now that the Devil Lord had been reborn, they were actually shocked and afraid of her, not out of true reverence. Now that they heard that she was the main person who saved the gods-demons continent, they were shocked and their bad impression of her changed slightly. It turned out that demons could save the world too. At this moment, the purple smoke had already spread over half of Mount Jiai. However, it wasn't too bad. Just as the smoke was about to overflow, it hit some kind of barrier and didn't overflow. Instead, it just piled up higher and higher. From afar, it gave off a feeling of impending disaster. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. 50,000 years ago, the gods-demons continent was destroyed by this purple smoke. Now that it had reappeared, what were they going to do? Everyone looked at Shinjuli again, waiting for him to explain. This time it's a leakage of the purple smoke, not a large-scale eruption. As long as we control it well and repair the ancient formation, we can avoid this disaster. Supreme Divinity, what exactly should we do? Please tell us. Shinjuli did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. In this mountain, I set up a restriction 50,000 years ago to prevent the purple evil from leaking out. However, once the purple evil starts to leak out, this restriction can only last for 3 days. If the ancient formation is not repaired within 3 days, the restriction will explode and this mountain will disappear completely. At that time, the purple evil will spread to the 6 realms within a day. All living beings will turn into ignorant devils and be destroyed by the heavenly axiom. After Shinjuli finished talking about the pros and cons of this matter, he explained how to repair the ancient Great Array. This purple smoke was very tyrannical. It could even injure people around heaven rank level 1, and those below earth rank level 8 would be poisoned with a 100% chance. In order to repair the formation, one had to go deep into the ground where the purple smoke was the thickest. There were a total of 9 places where the formation had collapsed, and each place required a pair of immortals and devils to repair it. Furthermore, this pair of immortals and devils had to be 1 man and 1 woman. After Shinjuli explained the method and key points to repair the seal, he glanced at everyone. Everyone can freely group up, but it must be 1 immortal and 1 devil. 8 teams will enter the 8 damaged places. I will personally seal the central place. As for the others, split up into 8 directions and use spells to support the restriction. Shinjuli first picked out the 18 people who were responsible for repairing the formation, then let them regroup freely. At this time, no one dared to be negligent and looked for their own partners. Shuilan naturally wanted to be in the same group as Amo, but demons could not be in the same group. He could only reluctantly choose a fairy from the celestial world. Chapter 1703. Amo pursed her lips. She didn't say anything as she watched them split into groups. She was the Devil Master. Only the Supreme Divinity was qualified to be her partner. Needless to say, Shinjuli wanted to seal the most important place in the center with her. Was she going to be alone with him? She didn't know if her heart was in a mess. Forget it. It didn't matter if she was in the same group as him. They were just temporary partners. In the future, they would go their separate ways. At such a crucial time, she didn't want to cause any trouble. Gong Huanyin, follow me to repair the center. Shinjuli's voice suddenly sounded again. He looked at a female guardian of the devil world. The female guardian was stunned. She looked up at the Supreme Divinity in disbelief. She opened her mouth slightly and pointed at herself. She stuttered, Supreme Divinity is calling me? Yes. Do you have a problem with that? Shinjuli asked in a calm and natural voice. No. But I'm the weakest. I'm afraid. I'm afraid I can't keep up with Supreme Divinity. Gong Huanyin was the weakest of the four guardians of the devil world. Now that she was chosen by the Supreme Divinity, she almost thought she was dreaming. Don't be afraid. I'll tell you what to do when the time comes. Shinjuli's voice was slightly gentle. Gong Huanyin couldn't help but look at her master, Amo. Amo's expression was normal. He still stood there without saying a word. It should be a tacit agreement. At this time, Gong Huanyin naturally agreed. She didn't know why, but she felt a little nervous. She felt a little sorry for her master. Since the rebirth of the Devil Master, although she treated her subordinates coldly, she didn't criticize them. She even gave them the greatest degree of freedom. She was a rare good master. After she agreed, she couldn't help but look at Imo again. Imo stood there but didn't look at them at all. There was a smile on his lips and no one could see any displeasure. In fact, if they were partners, everyone would be willing to be with a strong master. At least there was less pressure and more safety. Originally, everyone thought that the Supreme Divinity and the Devil Master would be partners. Now that the Supreme Divinity suddenly picked another female devil, how could the men of the immortal world be polite? They all came to discuss the partnership with Imo, but Imo rejected them all. Even the Celestial Emperor extended a sincere invitation. May I have the honor of traveling with you, Devil Master? He felt that other than the Supreme Divinity, he was the only one who was qualified to be the Devil Master's partner. Imo smiled faintly and ignored him. Her slender hand suddenly pointed at Yi Tianli, who had been standing in a remote corner. Her voice was crisp and clear. Yi Tianli, do you dare to partner with me? Yi Tianli was stunned. He used to be the strongest cultivator in the immortal realm, but ever since his hand was cut off by Amo's sword, his newbie hand hadn't regenerated yet, so his power was greatly reduced. The man who used to be the most handsome man in the six realms had now become somewhat down and out. Just now, when they were free to group up, none of those demonesses took the initiative to invite him. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed, but it was also within his expectations, so he stood in a corner without saying a word, waiting for the random pairing. However, he didn't expect Imo to actually choose him. This was completely out of his expectations. He couldn't help but raise his head, his gaze faintly complicated. You? Imo looked at him. I won't force anyone. You can refuse. Yi Tianli smiled. Why should I refuse? Thank you, Devil Master, for your appreciation. There was a hint of sarcasm in his tone. Chapter 1704. Shinjuli's expression changed slightly. He looked at Yi Tianli and then at Imo. Finally he said, the Demon Lord is in charge of the second most important place. It's not a small matter. We must choose someone who can cooperate with us at the crucial moment. Imo finally turned to look at him. Their eyes met slightly in the air. Imo was calm and her eyes were as calm as water. How do you know that Venerable Yi and I won't cooperate? Shinjuli choked. Imo looked at Yi Tianli again. Are you afraid that I once cut off Venerable Ye's right hand and he will hold a grudge and drop the ball at the crucial moment? This sentence was asked so directly. Not only did it make Shinjuli choke again, but it also made Yi Tianli's handsome face turn pale. He subconsciously retorted, how can I be such a shameless villain? No matter how narrow-minded I am, I will not joke around with the people of the six realms. It's rare that the Demon Lord thinks highly of me. I will do my best to cooperate with the Demon Lord. You can rest assured. Imo clapped her hands gently and smiled. I like what you said. Yi Tianli, if you hold a grudge against me, you can seek revenge on me after this incident. I will accept it. At most, I will return you one hand. Her smile was like a flower blooming and a pearl shining brightly. She had a kind of upright character which made Yi Tianli's heart tremble again. Yi Tianli originally had some other thoughts in his heart, but at this moment all the bad thoughts disappeared. He raised his head and smiled. Demon Lord, you are too serious. Back then, Demon Lord punished me because I was in the wrong first. Demon Lord's punishment is reasonable and not excessive. If you were in my position, if my child was stolen, I am afraid that I would tear the thief into pieces. Demon Lord, you have already shown mercy by cutting off my hand. He bowed deeply to Am. O Demon Lord, after I cut off my hand, I did hold a grudge against you. But now I have thought it through. This time I will do my best to cooperate with you to seal Zisha. I will not dare to be disloyal. If I am disloyal, I will be struck by lightning. This was a vicious vow. Thunder rolled faintly in the sky, indicating that his vow was valid. Shinjuli naturally had no more objections. He took the lead and jumped into the formation. The immortals and devils sealed in all directions naturally followed. If one wanted to enter the interior of the formation, they had to go through the same door, the life gate. After entering the gate of life, they parted ways. In order to ensure that this operation was 100% successful, they had to ensure that no accidents happened to any group. The inside of the formation was unpredictable and filled with killing intent. The forks in the paths were as numerous as a spider's web. If one took the wrong path, everything would go wrong. Once one entered the death gate, not to mention sealing the loophole, even the person would be turned into ashes immediately. Shinjuli was the only one he was familiar with, so he was duty-bound to send each pair to the designated location. According to the pre-agreed formation, when they first entered the narrow gate of life, Shinjuli walked in the front, followed by his partner Gong Huanyin, and then the others. Imo was at the back and in front of her was Yi Tianli. This formation was the most convenient to deal with unexpected situations. After everyone rushed down, they found that the formation was in the belly of the mountain. After passing through the gate of life, there was a dark passage. The passage was filled with purple smoke. It was so dense that it was tangible and tangible. It spread around everyone and could not be dispersed. Chapter 1705. Everyone activated their protective barriers to resist the invasion of the purple smoke. The purple smoke was too thick, and they felt suffocated as they walked through it. Probably because it had been sealed for tens of thousands of years, there were some unknown things growing in the array. From time to time, they would suddenly appear in the purple smoke and attack people who entered. Fortunately, Imo had come in advance and knew the general situation inside. He also explained it to everyone in advance. Everyone was a master, so it was not too difficult to deal with it. There were various flashing colors of talismans on the walls of the passage from time to time, flashing like ghost fire. Which one of the people who entered this passage had not been in this world for thousands of years? What strange things had they not seen? What scary places had they not been to? Most people thought that they did not know what the word fear was. But after entering, they could clearly feel a very strong and terrifying aura. It was as if there was a very scary monster hidden in the depths of the purple smoke, waiting for a group of people to walk into its trap with its mouth wide open. It was a fear that came from the bones. Those who were slightly weaker would be paralyzed by the terrifying aura before they could even touch the monster. Most people's hearts were beating wildly, and they subconsciously held their breath. Gong Huanyin was the weakest among them. Soon after entering, her legs began to tremble. The further she walked, the more afraid she became. Even her body trembled slightly. "Don't be afraid." Shinjuli, who was walking in front, seemed to sense the strangeness of his companion. He comforted her in a low voice, "With me here, there will be no danger." His voice was low and steady, giving people a strong sense of security. Gong Huanyin's heart calmed down a little and she said in a trembling voice, "Yes. Thank you, Divine Lord. Hold my hand, you can calm down." Shinjuli spoke again. "Thank you, Divine Lord." Gong Huanyin's voice was full of surprise. The purple smoke in the passage was so thick that it was almost impossible to see people after a few steps. Imo was at the back of the group, so she could not see Shinjuli and the others clearly, but she could still hear their voices. Such a person gave people a feeling of a mountain no matter where he went, and people who were under his protection would feel very safe. But he asked Gong Huanyin to hold his hand, right? Such a clean freak had broken his own rules for the greater good. She lowered her eyes slightly. While she was distracted for a moment, she tripped over something and staggered. "Be careful." Yi Tianli, who was walking in front of her, held her. "Demon Lord, are you all right?" "I'm fine. I just tripped over a rock. Watch out." A purple bat emerged from the purple smoke and almost pecked Yi Tianli's head with its sharp beak. Imo swung his long sword horizontally, and the purple bat immediately turned into a few drops of blood. Her movements were as fast as lightning. Before Yi Tianli could even see her movements, she had already sheathed her sword. "Thank you," Yi Tianli said in a low voice. "You're welcome. It's my duty to protect my companions." Imo's voice was faint. When Shinjuli came in, he did say that in this big array, partners had to live and die together. Only by helping each other could they achieve the best results. "Yes." Yi Tianli only said one word, but he felt a little guilty. He was a man, and a man should have the responsibility to protect a woman. He should not wait for a woman to protect him. He had made up his mind that he would use all his strength to protect the woman behind him. Chapter 1706. Shui Yilan was right in front of Yi Tianli. He suddenly said, "Yi Tianli, we haven't reached the sealed area yet. Let's change positions first." Yi Tianli frowned but did not move. "The Divine Lord has instructed us to maintain this formation and not change positions. We haven't reached the sealed area yet. Change positions." Shui Yilan did not give up. He always felt that he should be the one standing next to Imo, especially in this dangerous area. He pulled back his sleeves and wanted to forcefully change positions with Yi Tianli by his collar. Now is the crucial moment to train your team's cooperation. No one is allowed to change positions. Xinjiuli, who was in front, said coldly without turning his head. "Shui Yilan, you and Ice Jade Fairy cooperate seamlessly. Now is not the time to care about small things. The big picture is more important," Imo said at the right time. "Alright, the big picture is more important." Although Shui Yilan wanted to scold his grandpa, he knew that it was not the time to throw a tantrum. The most important thing was to seal Zisha. This passage was quite long. There were various kinds of attacks along the way. Fortunately, none of these people were easy to deal with. It was more than enough to deal with them. These people were grouped temporarily and they came from two different factions. In the beginning, they had some scruples about each other and did not dare to leave their backs to each other. However, after walking in this passage for a long time, they knew that they could rely on each other without any accidents. Slowly they began to cooperate. When dealing with those attacks, they paid attention to cooperating with each other. Slowly they became more familiar with each other and trusted each other more. Imo no longer paid attention to Xinjiuli's team. Instead, she focused on cooperating with Yi Tianli. In order to train their tacit understanding, Imo and Yi Tianli would fight side by side once they encountered an attack. As for the monsters coming from Yi Tianli's direction, she did not care at all. Everyone knew that Yi Tianli's right hand was very powerful, but very few people knew that his left-hand sword skills were also very good. He just did not usually show it. Most of the monsters that appeared at the beginning were small but in large numbers. For example, vampire bats. Because it had lived in such a place for a long time, this kind of monster had an extremely powerful insidious poison on its body. Being scratched by it could kill a person. When the countless bats attacked, he and Imo stood with their backs to each other. Their swords flashed like lightning, killing all the monsters that attacked from their direction. Imo, on the other hand, had his back to him the entire time, never once turning his head. Trust. Only people with absolute trust would do that. The other party was a devil, but he was able to trust an immortal who had a grudge against him so much. Even now, he was still a cripple. After dealing with the attack, he asked with a half-hearted smile, "Imo, aren't you afraid that a half-cripple like me can't protect you?" One had to know that there were hundreds of vampire bats attacking at the same time. If he had been slightly slower, there would have been one or two of them stabbing into her back. Imo smiled carelessly and only said a few words, "I believe you." Yi Tianli's heart skipped a beat when he heard those words. This time, however, it wasn't love, but the absolute trust of a companion that made his blood boil. When he first got close to Imo, he was a little more competitive. Later on, it was a man's desire to conquer. The more he could not get, the more he wanted to get. He used all kinds of methods to please her and conquer her. In the end, he did not know whether his desire to conquer her was greater or Chapter 1707. Later he was defeated by Xinjiuli and left. He still resented Imo. Later, Imo cut off his hand because of Xin Yanma. His hatred for Imo went up another level. This hatred was the kind of hatred a man would have for his ex-girlfriend. He hated her for being so heartless. But now he saw a kind of carefree brightness in her. Her appearance had changed and he did not expect that her personality had changed as well. She was straightforward, bright and generous. These characteristics were gradually revealed in her. Perhaps she did not realize it, but she had unconsciously attracted his attention. However, he knew that she now regarded him as a companion who could go through life and death together. Sometimes, this kind of companionship was more touching than love. It was only at this moment that Yi Tianli truly regarded Imo as a friend who could go through life and death together. He did not say anything. Friends did not need to talk. Actions spoke for themselves. Yi Tianli heard the movement of the team at the front. Xinjiuli protected Gong Huanyin very well. Gong Huanyin gradually calmed down from the panic when she was attacked. She knew that no matter how dangerous the situation was, Shinjuli would solve it for her. He would not let her get hurt. She could finally perform her usual level. From time to time he could hear Gong Huanyan's happy and careful voice. Divine Lord, is my move okay? It's okay. Divine Lord, I'm sorry. I almost couldn't block it and let the bat bite you. It's okay. Divine Lord, was the angle of my move a little off? No. Divine Lord, Yi Tianli had met Gong Huanyan before. Her kung fu was indeed good, but she was a little timid. As a member of the Devil Clan, she had a shy problem. She would blush when talking to men. Every time she saw him in Mo Palace, she would blush and walk away without even greeting him. He did not expect her to be so talkative. Shinjuli was really good. He could make a witch with such a personality gradually relax. It was as if she was a different person. Although he couldn't see Gong Huanyan's expression, he could imagine how shy and timid she was. Although Gong Huanyan wasn't as beautiful as Mo, she still had her own charm. In Mo Palace, there were still many devils who were fascinated by her. Yi Tianli could not help but look at Mo, who was beside him. Mo did not seem to have heard the conversation in front of him. There was nothing wrong with his expression. It seemed like Mo really had no feelings for this supreme divinity. She heard that they had already broken off the engagement. She wondered if she still had a chance. Yi Tianli was slightly distracted. Shua. A gust of wind from a sword flashed past his ear, startling him. When he came back to his senses, he saw a blood-sucking centipede struggling on Mo's crimson sword. With a slight shake of Mo's hand, the centipede turned into smoke and dissipated. Thank you. Yi Tianli mumbled. You're welcome. If you want to get out of here alive, don't get distracted. Mo's voice was slightly stern. If this Yi Tianli was once her subordinate, he would definitely be scolded by her. At such a moment, the group of agents that she had previously led would put aside their worries and focus on completing the mission wholeheartedly. Yes. Yi Tianli could not help but respond. After that, he realized that he seemed to be a little obedient. One must know that he was usually arrogant because of his talent. Even the Sky Emperor did not dare to scold him when he spoke to him. Chapter 1708. Now that he was being scolded by Mo, he didn't feel any displeasure at all. How strange. At this moment, they arrived at a relatively open area where the purple smoke was much less. They could already vaguely see the people in front of them. The monsters that jumped out of the purple smoke to attack them also stopped appearing. Everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. Not long after, they arrived at the first ceiling point. Shinjuli left behind the weakest pair of people. The deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. Therefore, the first ones to stay behind were the weaker ones. After another round of bloody battles and killing a ground full of blood-sucking skeletons, they arrived at the second ceiling point. Just like that, one battle after another, pairs of people were left behind. The line was getting shorter and shorter. When they arrived at the sixth ceiling point, Shuilan was also left behind. He sneered and was a little unconvinced. I think they should be at the seventh ceiling point. If there were no accidents, Mo should be at the eighth ceiling point. He wanted to be closer to her so they could take care of each other. In the face of Shuilan's protest, Shinjuli only said one sentence. I have the final say here. Shuilan was speechless. He looked at Mo. Mo still said the same thing. Shuilan, the bigger picture is more important. Shuilan didn't say anything. He and the fairy stayed behind and watched the six people leave. They watched as Mo's figure gradually disappeared into the purple smoke. He suddenly froze and called out, Momo? He jumped up and was about to leave his position to chase after Mo. According to Shinjuli's instructions, once a team entered the ceiling point, they couldn't move as they pleased. Otherwise the formation would shake and it might backfire. Fortunately, the Ice Jade Fairy was calm and wise. She grabbed Shuilan. Don't move. Along the way, this Ice Jade Fairy was like a piece of silent ice. Although she cooperated with him very well, she almost never spoke to him. She was ice cold, worthy of her title of Ice Jade Fairy. Shuilan was the kind of person who, except for his sweetheart, would treat all other women the same. Therefore, he didn't pay attention to his partner's appearance at all. Moreover, this Ice Jade Fairy seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mist, covering half of her appearance. When she was in a crowd, her presence was extremely low. Shuilan did not expect that she would dare to stop him at a time like this. He frowned and almost swung his sleeve at her. But when he thought of the overall situation that made his balls ache, he endured it. He only pulled back his sleeve, glanced at Fairy Ice Jade and coldly said, Although this king is your partner, it is only a temporary cooperation. Don't touch this king. The Ice Jade Fairy withdrew her hand and indifferently replied, if it wasn't for the bigger picture, this fairy wouldn't care about you. There was actually someone who dared to talk to him like this. Shuilan's pair of watery eyes fell on Fairy Ice Jade's face. Just as he was about to ridicule her, he suddenly felt that her appearance was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. Shuilan thought about it and a name suddenly popped into his mind, Princess Mingwan. This Ice Jade Fairy was actually 80% similar to the Princess Mingwan he met in the Tianxi continent. Shuilan glanced at the other party again, but didn't take it to heart. There were many similar people in this world. It wasn't strange that Fairy Ice Jade and Princess Mingwan were similar. His full attention was still on Imo. He seemed to have seen bloodstains on Imo's back earlier. Chapter 1709. She couldn't have been injured, could she? He was so nervous that he couldn't help but take out the sound-transmitting talisman to ask. However, he remembered that ordinary sound-transmitting talismans were useless in this large array. There was only one sound-transmitting talisman that could be used, but it could only contact Xinjiuli in one direction. Damn it. Shuilan clenched his fists. He didn't want to talk to Xinjiuli in this life. Perhaps there was a sweat stain on Momo's body? After all, she was originally wearing a red dress. Even if there was a water stain, it would look like blood. Besides, he couldn't see anything wrong with her. Maybe he was wrong. However, Shuilan didn't have time to think about this problem because another wave of monsters was coming. He had to join forces with Ice Jade Fairy to fight against the enemies. This large array was like a game. The deeper they went, the more difficult it was. Not only did the path become harder, but the monsters they encountered were also more advanced. The inexplicable pressure also became heavier. Among the remaining 6 people, Gong Huanyan was the weakest. She obviously couldn't bear the pressure. Her heart seemed to jump out of her mouth and her body trembled violently. At this moment they were walking through a white bone tunnel. All kinds of strange bones were arranged in various strange patterns. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, they would turn into demons and pounce on them. Divine. Divine Lord. Gong Huanyan couldn't help but lean her body toward Xinjiuli. Swoosh. A red light rushed over and directly covered Gong Huanyan. Gong Huanyan was at her most nervous moment. She was so scared that she screamed. Her shrill scream shook people's eardrums and echoed in the white bone tunnel. What are you screaming for? I'm just setting up a protective shield for you, Imo said coldly. She regretted bringing Gong Huanyan here. She was too timid and might drop the ball at a critical moment. The most important thing was that she would lose face as the Devil Master. Gong Huanyan's pretty face was pale. Only now did she see that this was a protective shield. She was still in shock. Thank you, Devil Master. She stuttered. Shut up. Imo saw her trembling and stuttering appearance and became angrier. She couldn't help but reprimand her. Yes. Gong Huanyan shrunk even more, almost curling into a ball in the barrier. She was a pitiful little bunny type. Usually if nothing happened it wouldn't be obvious. However, when it came to a critical moment, a person's weakness would be exposed under fear. What kind of lousy protector did that bastard Himu find for her? So embarrassing. Gong Huanyan, when this matter is over, you don't have to return to Mo Palace anymore. Mo didn't want this kind of little white rabbit to stay by his side. Gong Huanyan's eyes immediately widened, and her voice trembled even more. Demon Master. She was on the verge of crying and tears rolled down from her bright eyes. Don't worry. Xinjiuli, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. With a wave of his sleeve, he broke the wizardry barrier that Imo set on Gong Huanyan and set up another one for her. The pale white wizardry barrier was like a luminous pearl in the dark bone tunnel. I will arrange a place for you. His words reassured Gong Huanyan. The place that the Supreme Divinity personally arranged must be the best place. It might even be better than Mo Palace. Gong Huanyan glanced at Imo, and then smiled through her tears. She turned her gaze to Xinjiuli. Thank you, Supreme Divinity. Her voice was sweet, like a silver bell in the wind. Let's go. Xinjiuli didn't look at the people behind him with different expressions. He took the lead and walked forward. Chapter 1710. Naturally, Gong Huanyan followed closely behind. Imo paused in place, her fingers trembling in her sleeves. Imo. Yi Qianli followed the team for 2 steps and suddenly seemed to notice something wrong. He turned around and called her who was lagging behind. Imo only felt a mouthful of blood rolling around her throat. She forced herself to swallow it, and at the same time she swallowed all kinds of indescribable emotions that were about to boil. The big picture was more important. This was her life's creed, and it was also her life's iron law. She could not affect the big picture because of her personal emotions, especially when it concerned the survival of the 6 realms. However, did she deserve to swallow this resentment just because of this? Her eyes flashed and she secretly took a breath, then strode forward to catch up. Divine Lord, are you trying to steal my woman? Openly trying to steal someone in front of her? Did she really think that she, the Devil Lord, was a pushover? She did not want to take this lying down, so she asked directly. If I remember correctly, the Devil Lord has already expelled her from Mo Palace. Shenjiuli's eyes finally fell on her face. Imo raised her lips and smiled. I only expelled her from Mo Palace, not from the Devil Realm. Since she is still a devil, she is still my subordinate. She has nothing to do with you, Divine Lord. She slowly pulled out the Sky Splitter sword, and her eyes fell on Gong Huanyan again. Her voice was cold. I have a bad habit. Even if I don't want something, I will not allow others to touch it. I would rather destroy it. At this moment, the murderous aura on her body was almost overwhelming. It seemed that the next moment, the enchantment around Gong Huanyan would be split open and she would be killed in one move. Gong Huanyan was dumbfounded. Shenjiuli frowned slightly and protected her behind him. Devil Lord, what are you doing? Do you think I will allow you to kill people here? Imo smiled, but the words she said were as sharp as a knife. Shenjiuli, so what if you don't allow it? You want to slap me away? Or just kill me? Shenjiuli's face changed and his eyes fell on her face. His heart seemed to be suddenly twisted by something, and the mask he had been wearing almost broke. Did she really recover her memory? Or was it just a coincidence? The 2 words Shuema almost blurted out, but in the end she held it back. Fortunately, his ability to remain calm was extraordinary. Even though his heart was in turmoil, his face remained calm and collected. Devil Master, please be rational. Imo brushed her sleeves lightly. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. Shenjiuli, for the sake of the bigger picture, I won't kill her. But if you insist on going your own way, then don't blame me for being impolite to her. If you want to stop me, there is only one way, and that is to kill me. Or severely injure me so that I no longer have the strength to harm others. But do you think I'll care about this damn formation after you've injured me? Shenjiuli, I didn't mean to hurt you. Although he tried his best to remain calm, there was still a hint of dullness in his voice. Of course, Imo didn't listen carefully. She just raised her head and laughed, her eyes slightly sharp. Then are you still poaching people under my command? Shenjiuli looked at her. They were only a few steps away, but it seemed as far as the horizon. Her personality was still the same. If she didn't have to suffer a loss, she wouldn't take it. She clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. He looked at her with his eyes flashing slightly and said lightly, Devil Master, I only hope that you will consider the bigger picture. Since she is still a member of your devil world, I naturally won't. Gong Huanyan's face turned green this time. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.